What do I get this stuff there? All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Housing Committee meeting. First off, I would just like to acknowledge that Ottawa is located on the unceded and never surrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. Il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation algonquine Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence sont enrichies et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. I'm going to ask the committee coordinator to do the roll call.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Curry. Here. Councillor Dudas. Here. Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kitts. Here. Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Vice Chair Gower.
Here.
And Chair Leeper. You have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. And I note Chair DeRuse is here as well.
And I'm also here.
And I missed a couple people on my second page.
I'm here.
Apologies, Councillor Tierney
All good.
and Councillor Troster.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair DeRuse is here. He is ex officio to our committee. I had the pleasure of attending the ARAC meeting on Friday as an ex officio member. So good to see you, George. Thanks for being here. And Councillor Luloff is here with us as well. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 4.2 to 4.8 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council on March 8th, 2023, please email or call the committee or council coordinator. Kelly Crozier sitting next to me. Are there any declarations of interest? None. Are the minutes of the Planning and Housing Committee meeting 3 Wednesday, February 15th, 2023 confirmed?
Confirmed.
We'll see through the agenda what items need to be held. There is the 2024 Development Charge Bylaw and Community Benefits Charge Bylaw review by a councillor's sponsor group. Does anyone have any questions about that? I know we have one direction coming. No questions. We'll just deal with the direction now. Let those staff move on their way. Lane, did you want to provide any direction to staff on this item?
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if staff would be amenable to a direction that for the composition of the committee, that for the two urban councillors that were identified, one would be of the inner urban transect and one would represent the outer urban transect, please.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So staff have received that direction and taken it. Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. So we'll consider that item. Is that item carried? Carried. With respect to 1835 Stittsville Main Street, there are no presentation, no delegations, no correspondence. I believe we have the applicants with us. If the committee is prepared to carry this, do the applicants wish to speak? They're just joining now. Here's Paul. Good morning, Mr. Black.
Morning, Councillor. I think Thomas is going to speak.
I have no concerns if the committee's prepared to approve this.
Fantastic. Thank you both. Is this item carried? Carried.
Thank you.
253, 255, and 257 York Street, and 78 and 80 Nelson Street. I know there's a motion to defer. I think we can deal with that now. Vice Chair.
Whereas with respect to the report, the applicant has provided additional details regarding the existing buildings and proposed additions, which may have an impact on the details of recommended zoning and staff report. And whereas planning services staff, as well as the applicant, support the report be deferred to a future planning and housing committee date not yet determined. And whereas notification and a revised report will be provided when the item is to return to planning and housing committee. Therefore, be it resolved that with respect to the report, Planning and Housing Committee approve the following: defer the report indefinitely until the Director of Planning Services deems the issues corrected, and that staff be authorized to publish a revised report in the agenda in a future Planning and Housing Committee. Be it further resolved that notice be provided prior to this item returning to the Planning and Housing Committee.
Does anyone want to speak to deferral? I don't see any hands. Is the deferral carried?
Carried.
Moving on to 6173 Renault Road. I understand we do have a delegation, so we'll hold this item as a delegation and thank you. So we'll hold that one. At 453 and 455 Coventry Road, there are no presentations, no delegations, and no correspondence. This is to approve the amendment to the zoning bylaw for 453 or 455 Coventry Road. Is that item carried?
Carried.
There's a zoning bylaw amendment, part of 570 March Road. There is no presentation, no delegations, no correspondence. We do have the applicants with us. If the committee is prepared to carry this, do you still wish to speak? James Ireland and Greg Winters from Novatech, who are just joining us now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If the committee is prepared to carry this item, we don't have nothing to say. Thank you.
Is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And at 8605 Campeau Drive, there's no presentation, no delegations, and no correspondence. There is a technical motion that Councillor Curry is going to move. I'll ask Jonah Bond with Holtzman Consultants, if the committee is prepared to carry this item, do you wish to speak?
Not sure.
Hello, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Bond. If the committee is prepared to carry this item, do you wish to speak?
No, that won't be required if they're prepared to carry it.
Thanks. And I think we can deal with the technical motion from Councillor Curry now. Councillor Curry.
Whereas report ACS 2023 PREPS 0024, the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa zoning bylaw to permit a car wash as an ancillary use to a gas bar on part of the lands municipally known as 8605 Campeau Drive. And whereas the current version of the report contains certain errors that would unintentionally apply changes to the zoning bylaw other than the changes recommended by staff. And whereas a technical amendment is required to exclude these unintended changes from the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw, therefore be it resolved that Planning and Housing Committee amend the report and Planning and Housing Committee Agenda 4, Item 4.7 by 1, replacing the text of the report recommendation 1 with the following text: that Planning and Housing Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 for 8605 Campeau Drive, as shown in document 1, by adding a new exception to permit a car wash as an ancillary use to a gas bar as detailed in document 2, and 2, replacing the text on page 8 that reads, need that lifted up. That reads exception 2598. Additionally, staff recommend minor changes to the provision of exception 2598 to clarify the wording without changing the original intent. With the following text, new exception. Additionally, staff recommend adding a new urban exception in order to permit a car wash as an ancillary use to a gas bar on the land subject to this application, but not on lands that are currently zoned urban exception 2598 and are not subject to this application. And 3, replacing document 1, location map and zoning map with attachment 1 to this motion. And 4, replacing document 2, details of recommended zoning with attachment 2 to this motion. And Therefore, it be resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Curry, for that remarkable demonstration of memorization. Does anyone wish to address either the technical amendment or the main item? Oh, Councillor Rulaf, would you have your hand up? No. Oh, yeah.
You had a problem with that?
No, that was great. Is the technical item amendment carried?
Carried.
Is the main item carried as amended?
Carried.
Thank you. The item at 360 Kennedy Lane East, obviously we have a number of delegations. I believe it's about a dozen today, so we're holding that item. There's an item on the official plan 2023 implementation. Councillor Brockington has asked that be held. We'll deal with that after Kennedy Lane. For the status update, Planning and Housing Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending February 10th, 2023. Is that information item received? Wonderful, thank you. All right, so moving back to the first item that we've held. This is the zoning bylaw amendment for 6173 Renault Road. There's a technical motion on this one. Is it technical? Yeah. So we'll get that on the floor first.
Thanks, Chair. Whereas respect to the report, the incorrect ward was listed on the cover page in both English and French. And whereas the ward boundary review is subject site is now located in Ward 19, Orleans South Navan. And whereas the councillor for Ward 19 has been involved in the review of the zoning application, therefore be it resolved that with respect to the report, the cover page be updated in both English and French with the following: Ward Orleans South Navan 19, Quartier Orléans Sud Navan 19, and be it further resolved that pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice be given.
Thank you. So we'll consider that technical amendment after the presentation and delegations. First, I take it, Shoma, is there a staff presentation? Is there a staff presentation? Fantastic. Take us through.
There
it,
is. So this is a zoning bylaw amendment item for 6173 Renault Road. Next slide, please. The subject site is in Orleans East Urban Community and is east of Paget, Navan, and Renault Roads intersection. The site has two frontages, one on Trails Edge Way and the second one on Renault Road. There is currently a large bungalow on the site with a pool and several mature cedar hedges. Next slide, please. The proposal is for a planned unit development containing 24 residential units, and there are 29 vehicle parking spaces on the site, 5 of which are for visitors parking. There's also 20 bicycle parking spaces interspersed throughout the site. Cedar hedges exist to the west as well as to the east, or in this case, to the top of the slide as well as to the bottom of the slide. The top of the slide being the west side. The cedar hedges are proposed to be retained. The western cedar hedge will help screen the proposed enclosed recycling shed as well as the earth bins from the interior side yard of 6157 Renault Road. Next slide, please. The proposed elevation height on Renault Road is 3.5 stories high for the stacked back-to-back residential units, similar to the height of the development across Renault Road, known as La Crème, and it's seen in the illustration to the right of the top of the page, pardon me, the slide. The proposed elevation height, on the other hand, along Trails Edge Way drops by 1 story to 2.5 stories, and it is similar to the lower height profile provided along that exists along Trails Edge Way. Next slide, please. The site is currently zoned Development Reserve, which recognizes lands intended for future urban development in areas designated as neighborhoods in the official plan. The applicant is proposing to rezone the site to residential fourth density subzone M, with an exception to permit a planned unit development consisting of 16 back-to-back stacked residential units in one building and 8 back-to-back townhouse dwellings in another building. The exception is to permit the 1 parking space per unit, whereas the current zoning requires 1.2 parking spaces for the stacked residential units. Another exception being provided is to prohibit the more intense development or building forms such as low-rise apartments and retirement homes. The Suburban Transact and neighborhood policies encourage low-rise intensification to allow a range of housing options. The goal of these policies and zone is to evolve the community to a 15-minute neighborhood over time. Planning staff recommend approval of the zoning bylaw amendment for the following reasons. The proposal does align with the council-approved official plan and the East Urban Community Design Plan for Phase 1. The uses have been limited to low-rise, and the higher density low-rise forms, such as apartments, have been restricted. Compatibility with the character of the surrounding neighborhood, for example, the stacked residential units being proposed are fronting only onto Renault Road and are in keeping with the stacked units across the road, whereas the townhouse block fronting onto Trails Edge Way has a lower height profile and is in keeping with the lower height profile along Trails Edge Way. There is also sufficient infrastructure capacity to support the proposed development. The addition of these 24 residential units will have minimal impact on the existing road network. And finally, the parking reduction that is being sought is minimal and will not apply to visitor parking. The site is providing a minimum of 1 parking space per residential unit, plus the 5 required for visitors. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. There is an opportunity for the applicants to make their presentation now. We'll hold questions for staff until after the applicants and delegation have had an opportunity to speak. Are Rosaline or Peter or George Elias either online or in person to speak to the item? Okay, Peter and Rosaline are both online. Please, you have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll hand it over to Rosalind to lead you through the some of the elements of our proposal.
May I have the slide deck? So I'm Rosalind Hill, the architect on the file. And this is an image on the Renault Road side. So you can see as the planner presented, the proposal is 3-story proposal. It's very residential in its sort of visual characteristics, even more so than the 3-story building that's across the street, which is a little bit more formal. This one is very personal with doors that are very visible from the street. So it addresses the street in a way that is going to improve the character and dynamic of the street. It's attractive to look at and interesting with porches. So as the street begins to attract more pedestrians, particularly the bus stop in front, this would be a great addition to the street to really personalize the street. Next slide, please. This is the site plan. I think I'll go to the next slide because the landscape plan is a little easier to see on the screen. One more, please. There we go. So you'll see there's the block of stacked townhouses on the Renault Road side. That's the image that you just saw. And then a block of townhouses on the Trails Edge side. In the center of the block, in the center between those two blocks is a parking court with trees all the way around it. You'll see that pathways for pedestrians connect the site across from the Renault Road side to the Trails Edge side, looping around that center court. There's lots of trees proposed. So it will be a very green feeling site. We're retaining the cedar hedges that exist, which are really big. So it will be a very green kind of location. Next slide, please. So that is our Renault Road context. Next slide. Again, this view on Renault Road. Next slide. So now you're seeing the backside of that 3-story block. Lots of porches. Again, the entrances are very visual and welcoming. So though it is a product with stacked units, it's a very neighborly kind of design. It's been designed to welcome people and make this feel like a community. Next slide, please. There you see that block at a distance from sort of the Trails Edge direction, and you get a sense of that center parking court, which was actually designed to allow for occasional community activities, instances in which you might clear out the cars and use the space for a community activity, a play day or a garage sale. Next slide, please. This is the elevation of the 3-story building. So you'll see this is wood siding. There are references to different traditional architectures, a real emphasis on those entrances with the peaks coming down to draw the eye towards the pedestrian entrances. And you'll see outdoor living space on a large deck for every unit. Next slide, please. Here you're seeing the context at the back on the Trails Edge side. This edge obviously has a very different characteristic. So we see these 2-story older development on the bottom slide, and then the very new next door development. And next slide. This is my last slide. Oh, no. Sorry, these are the neighbors immediately to the right of us on Trails Edge. And last slide, please. This is our 2-story building elevation on that side. So you'll see here, the height is in context with its surrounding. Again, still this strong emphasis drawing the eye to the pedestrian entrance, and lots of great outdoor living space. And the introduction on this block of some masonry. So on this side, we see buildings that have masonry, and we wanted to make sure that we were in keeping with that characteristic of the neighborhood as well. So a portion of the facade is masonry, but largely the architecture complements the architecture of the forward or the Renault facing block. Peter, why don't you continue from there?
Yeah, I think that I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair, and be able to respond to questions from the other delegation.
Thank you very much. I gotta figure out this mic. It's early in the term. There we go. Thank you very much to Ms. Hill and Mr. Hume. Are there any questions for the applicants? We won't be bringing them back, so this is the opportunity. Councillor Strasser.
Hi there. Thank you so much for being here. I know that there were some significant community concerns and that the applicant made quite a lot of changes to accommodate the community. I'm just wondering if you wanted to briefly speak to that dynamic and how it helped you develop the project into this form.
So originally, the project had a number of the site plan that we submitted had an access out onto Renault Road, and it also combined 2 sets of stacked units. So it was actually a 32 unit original submission that we made, and we had concerns about density, and we also had concerns about traffic and transportation, especially the access out onto your staff. We're very concerned about the access that we were providing out onto Renault Road. So in evaluating the transportation options, we went back and we did an analysis with a transportation consultant who actually recommended, said that the most appropriate access was no access out onto Renault Road, convert that to green space, make your access out onto Trails Edge Way. Your impact will be much smaller from a transportation perspective. And in combination with that, we reduced the units to address the density issue. So we restructured our entrance and we reduced the density to be more consistent along the Trails Edge Way portion. We also made sure that whatever parking configuration that we use, we maintained the required visitor parking, because on-street parking, people, how are visitors going to come to the site? And in changing the density, we changed the parking requirements. So although we're only asking for one space per unit, it only results in a reduction from the zoning bylaw of 3 parking spaces. So overall, not significant in the parking calculation when we maintain the visitor parking. 1 per space is appropriate. We're also very close to, well, very close. We're within official plan guidelines to the transit station on Brian Coburn. There is an ability for people from the site to walk internal to the community to that transit station and be able to take public transit, which is very consistent with the official plan that you just approved.
Thank you. It's always nice to see how these applications change when we can work with the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Troster. Are there any other questions for the applicants? See none, I'd invite Ms. Heather Buchanan with Bradley Estates Community Association to address the committee.
Am I unmuted?
There we go. Hi, Heather.
Good morning.
You know the rules. You got 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. Some of you are familiar already with the Bradley Estates Community Association through previous delegations and numerous news reports and interviews, all related to the inferior infrastructure and lack of access to services that we experience. But for those of you that are new to the committee, we thought we would use this opportunity to explain how this development fits in with the big picture. And then we are not opposed to the development per se, but what we are concerned about is that we continue to see new developments proposed for our area one after another with no infrastructure deficiencies being addressed. So we are grateful to the developer for addressing some of our concerns. And I must say that the design is quite appealing. So thank you very much for those adjustments. So while 6173 Renault is not huge, it is 24 new units replacing 1 bungalow. Other bungalows on the street are similarly up for sale and in every likelihood will be developed in the same manner. There's a minimum of 4 that are, next slide, please, you can go with that. A minimum of another 4 or so bungalows that are up for sale on Renault, which are being proposed for the similar type of development. On this map, you will see the starred location where this development is, and you will see in orange all of the proposed and approved, partially approved developments that are taking place in our area. These add up to more than 13,000 new units. Not cited are the potential for future infill developments with the significant DR zone lands in this EUC. So I want to emphasize the big picture here, that we have a whole lot of development going on and still have not had infrastructure keeping pace. Next slide, please. The local roads bear the brunt of these new developments, but not one infrastructure improvement has been made to accommodate this growth. The traffic impact study for this development was done in complete isolation without consideration given to all the traffic that is coming downstream from east and from south areas. We have had 2 deaths on Renault. We've had 2 critical injuries. We want to know, what is the threshold required to have the city respond rather than acknowledge to change the infrastructure in our area? Renault Road currently sees 18,000 cars and heavy trucks, construction vehicles all day on a non-arterial road meant as an original farm road, and the city traffic counts have verified this. So to suggest that developments will have a nominal effect on traffic is hard to take. Next slide, please. This is just to quickly show you the traffic patterns. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but just to show you that so much of the traffic needs to head from east to west, and then they access Anderson Road, which you can see on the slide, the picture on the left-hand side of that slide. We have done traffic studies and show that 75% of traffic is turning at Anderson to access the Hunt Club, Walkley employment nodes. So we can't just assume that all traffic is going to be using Navan and Innis, because currently that is not the pattern. Next slide, please. Again, there's little blue dotted lines on this map, and you can see the where all these new homes are being developed, and you can see where the LRT is in relationship to all of this development. It is quite a bit north. We do not have easy access to it. The Blair station is indicated. You can see where it is. We can drive 12 minutes to Blair station, but a bus currently takes us 45 minutes to get to Blair. Next slide, please. So I know the developer says that we're working towards a 15-minute community, and I know that's the goal for the city. Our closest grocery store is 4.5 kilometers to the northeast. We have no efficient direct transit. You can see some of the stats that are there. We are a car-centric community, so by eliminating parking spaces, we are a little bit concerned about that. Our local roads are already operating at capacity. I've read through extensively through documents. You can check out the master transportation studies done, page 63. If we go to the next, before we go, I want to emphasize this phantom BRT. In every one of these developments, we are, it's being justified because of the existence of a future bus rapid transit system that does not exist, nor is it listed on any horizon. Next slide, please.
You wrap it up, Heather. You're out of time.
Oh, darn. Okay. Skip this. There we go. This is Navan, no sidewalks. Renault, no sidewalk. Next slide. Here's what it is like to walk along Navan Road to catch buses. These are students getting off a bus. Next slide. Again, same thing. This is what we're dealing with. So we would like to wrap up by saying we are grateful to the developer for doing, for addressing some of our concerns, but we are asking for the city to please address some of our infrastructure concerns before continuing with development after development after development. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any questions for Ms. Buchanan? Question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you so much for being here today, Heather. I completely agree with everything you said in your presentation. I think members who were on this committee last term would have heard me talk about these issues quite a bit. And, you know, I too want to highlight and applaud the applicant for really responding to public feedback with changes to their application. I think this is a great example of how we can work together to enhance an application. So I do want to signal that. But the situation that we are continually faced with in Ward 19 is we have a great application coming forward if we look at it in isolation, but it's the broader context of development wildly outpacing infrastructure in this area, especially on Renault Road, but throughout Orleans South Navan. So as you saw in the presentation, without upgrading the road network, the transit, the pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, bringing amenities to the area, We are approving applications that continue to fly in the face of our official plan and all of the goals that we've set as a council, a 15-minute neighborhood that we are striving for. We are talking about 32 units today, good missing middle, an applicant that has been working well with our staff and with the community. So I don't want to penalize them for that, but I am telegraphing to this committee, especially new members who have had less experience with this area, for staff, for applicants wanting to build in this area, we are at the boiling point. You saw just how much development is planned for this ward. And I think it's especially frustrating for residents of the area to hear those justifications of, well, we're close to a transit station for a BRT that's not in the affordable network, not on the horizon. If you take a bus from that park and ride, it's 30 minutes before you're at the LRT. So I know that it's response to a delegation, and that was a bit of a rant. So I will ask Heather, if another application like this comes forward, what would you like to see applicants or staff address for the next application that will inevitably come up?
Thank you for the question. So in previous delegations, for example, with respect to the Kaivan development at the corner of Paget and Navan, with respect to coming developments throughout Trails Edge, we have begged to have Navan Road urbanized. Currently, it is unsafe for pedestrians, cyclists, and for frankly, for anybody, not lit, ditch lined, no sidewalks, and heavily trafficked. At this stage, this is where a multitude of students, I walk that route every day, are getting off a bus and walking up a side of a very, very busy road. So Kaivan and other developers have all said there's no impact, that Navan Road does not need to be urbanized. And that is frankly shocking and reckless that the city has not bothered to update that part of the connection to the Chapel Hill Park and Ride. We are not expected, I don't know how they expect pedestrians and cyclists and whatnot to access that area safely. The second thing is, I've lived in this area for 15 years, and Renault Road still has a temporary sidewalk from at the intersection of Navan Road heading west. I can't believe 15 years later we don't have a sidewalk, whereas new communities throughout the area actually do have sidewalks. So it seems like it's kind of a forgotten corner. And I'm saying that every other development that comes along, they need to improve. Somehow we need to have safe sidewalks. We need to limit the traffic on Renault, and we need to provide efficient transit. We need to have express routes, not just 6 times a day, getting us to the LRT. Otherwise, nobody's going to be using that LRT. That's all over the place, but we really need Navan Road, Renault Road brought up to date, and we need to figure out how to move traffic out of the area.
So,
Thank you, Heather. I think your point's been well articulated, and I just want to thank you again for coming here today and sort of painting the picture of what development looks like in this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Luloff has a question for you, Heather.
Thanks for coming out today, Ms. Buchanan. It's always nice to hear from you in the community in Bradley Estates. Just one quick question for you. You've been talking about, trying to get, some of the traffic out of the area. I'm wondering, would the NCC approving option 7 of the Brian Coburn Rapid Transit Corridor extension relieve some of the pressures that you've identified here today?
Well, I would say 100%, Mr. Luloff. It's no secret that those 20,000 cars that are using that route daily are trying to access areas to the south and to the west of our area. And not any of them are going up to the LRT or to any of the 174 to head downtown that way, because you're not going to travel north and then west rather, and then travel south again. So right now, Renault Road is seeing all of this heavy traffic that goes through many, many communities, starting from Mer Bleu all the way through to Bradley Estates. So I invite the new members of the committee to have a look at the map and see what kinds of communities the Renault Road actually travels through, and see where the schools are located, the high school and the elementary school that is along that stretch. And it is seeing far too much traffic for that area, for communities. The road bisects the community in the same way that Main Street would bisect Ottawa East. And people need to understand that because we are such a huge growing area, the road is not capable of taking all that traffic. And whether it be going east or west, north or south, we're boxed in. That option 7 or a version of option 7, even a connection from Bryan Cove and Roundabout to the next corner, that little stretch, eliminating this Renault Road through all our communities would dramatically transform our quality of life and enhance safety.
Thanks so much. And what a great idea. Anybody who wants to hang out with Catherine, Laura, and I on a corner out there, I'll buy the coffee, come and check it out. And
great.
See what the it looks like. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And for those who are new on the committee, this is not an issue about which you've heard for the last time. I know our East End colleagues are very active on the transportation infrastructure in East End. So are there any further questions for Heather, Ms. Buchanan? Seeing none. Heather, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
There is an opportunity at this point to address questions to staff. No questions for staff with respect to this. Well, Councillor Gower, Vice Chair Gower.
So when staff are reviewing an application like this, how do you assess capacity of the local road networks in relation to whether or not this kind of development is appropriate?
Chair, through you. In this particular case, the application did not trigger a traffic impact assessment, meaning that the rates were too low to do so. So in this case, we actually worked with our transportation project manager to run those numbers for us to give us a sense of what those peak trips look like. We also work with our traffic assessment team to tell us what on-street parking looks like in this area. We also looked at intersections in the area to tell us about what's failing. So on that front, we understand that there's about 7 vehicles in peak hour generated from this project. We understand there to be ample parking, off-street parking for the short-term visitors in this area. And we understand that the nearby intersections at this point are not failing. So those are some of the factors that we look at when making these kinds of decisions on these applications. With respect to those broader strategic moves, we've come prepared today. So we do have people that can speak to that, but I don't think that this is probably the right forum for that. But we could certainly come back with a list of those 2023 area improvement projects, talk about the TMP and some of those other things, transit as well, that are happening in this area to support all of this growth. And of course, we know as some of these projects get built out, those road alignments will become improved through some of these other subdivisions in the area.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think that'd be helpful. It's although Renault has sidewalks, Navan does not. And I did check the travel planner and it advised me if I wanted to catch a bus from here to walk down Navan Road. So it is, I'd be very curious about what the plans are, future plans to urbanize that part of Navan Road in particular. Definitely seems like something that's needed in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Catherine.
Thank you. Good question. And I will say, we are actively working, with staff on all of these things. But as the applications continue to come in, we have another opportunity to sort of explain that the current state, the reality for residents today is all of these challenges that we've illustrated. I was just wondering, because we do have several applications like this where it is a number that's not triggering a traffic assessment or impact study. But if you looked at them sort of everything that's coming down the pipe in the next couple of months, then the number of units would. So is there any mechanism for staff to take that cumulative impact look at sort of what's coming through?
Chair, through you. And I think that would be a question that would be best directed to one of our transportation colleagues that are on the call, Councillor Kitts, if we could turn it to either Elizabeth Murphy or Frank McKinney, because I know they are looking at exactly that, those failing intersections, the cumulative impact of development when it's time to budget for certain area improvements. So if either, and I see them both on the screen, so I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor. We have a number of improvements that have been identified in the 2023 capital budget to help some of the transportation needs in this community. We have some are through development, some are through capital, some are through traffic safety. So one of the growth projects that we have identified for this year is the Mer Bleu Road widening. It's a $2 million project, and Frank McKinney is here today. He can speak to that in more depth. We have also identified with new traffic control devices at various intersections, Mer Bleu and Navin, Joshua and Renault and Milton and Navin Road. We have been following the intersection of Navin and Renault quite carefully as part of a motion that was identified at council. We have agreed to monitor it every year. In 2022, it was operating at a very good level of service, and we have asked that it be monitored again at the beginning of this year. We also have an intersection functional design study for Mer Bleu and Descoeurs that's coming up this year, as well as Brian Coburn and 10th Line Road. So these are things that we're doing in the area in general that will help and assist with a lot of the traffic concerns and things that you see. And with that, I will pass it to Frank McKinney to talk a little bit more about the Mer Bleu Road widening.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, we're looking for the area for the East Urban area. I know what Councillor Kitts is looking for. She's looking for an overall, that I understand, overall traffic study with respect to the East Urban community. We do know that stage 2 is coming along in 2024. We're looking at adjusting bus routes to accommodate this LRT. We have a future traffic signal planned at Innis and La Marche. We have, like Elizabeth just talked about, future roundabout at Navin and Renault when it's warranted. We have the design is in the budget this year for the Mer Bleu widening from south of Descoeurs down to Renault Road, which includes a roundabout at Renault Road and an intersection at Descoeurs signalized. And we're also looking at transit priority measures with the NCC. The NCC are warm to this idea, although we're waiting on an NCC board decision, and these would include transit priority measures along Navin Road, Blackburn Hamlet Bypass, and Innis Road, with a total of 8 minutes savings on your travel time. We're also looking at the design of Blair Road widening, incorporating HOV lanes all the way from Innis Road to Blair Station. We are looking at this overall area in relation to the new TMP. We look at the development in the area. We take account the trip generation from this new development, and the TMP will identify the problems and potential solutions for the long term up to 2046.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, it's clear that we're working on different solutions, but not everything you identified responds to the Bradley Estates community. Like Mayor Blur is a north-south connection. We've been talking about the challenges with east-west traffic, Navin Road. So I think that this conversation is, as you stated, sort of better had with respect to the TMP and some of the work that's happening in Transportation Committee. But it's also important to have it here at planning, because the applications are still coming fast and furious while we're awaiting what might get addressed with the TMP. So that is important for this committee to understand, is that, you know, it's 32 units this week. In 2 weeks, it's going to be another 32 units. After that, it's going to be 150 units. And it's this cumulative impact. People these homes are being built. These cars are being added to the road. We don't have the transit. We don't have the walkable amenities. So that's sort of, I think, the point that the delegation was making, and that you'll all hear me talk lots about. So thank you.
That's extremely well put, Councillor Kitts. I would just remind members there are about a dozen members, so of the public, who are hoping to chat about another file that's here. So I don't want to delve too deep into the broader plan for East End transportation infrastructure, but understanding that it may play into your decision on how to vote on this file, we'll move to Councillor Dudas.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't going to speak to this, but I do want to strongly echo my colleague Catherine Kitts's comments. One of the reasons why this community has such a huge issue with transportation is not just because the infrastructure wasn't built when the houses were built, or that more houses are also being built. It's also because the zoning hasn't been upheld to allow for commercial walkable amenities. You know, to buy a bag of milk, you have to get in your car. You can't actually physically, from the vast majority of this community, walk or bike or take a bus. And even if you do get in your car to go to a nearby shop, you're talking 10 minutes because you have to reroute around all the closed roads. This community, somebody said a new residential development here. Parts of this community are nearing 20 years or plus, and they still don't have adequate sidewalks. And I think about what Councillor Gower mentioned about Renault having sidewalks. Well, yes, absolutely. And Councillor Gower, you're right. There are sections that do, but then there's sections where it has a temporary sidewalk that has basically little pylons up because it's never been instituted. This truly remains a community, a booming community built around rural roads with no amenities. So, I was listening to the delegate, Heather Buchanan, and she has been here on many occasions. The Community Association has been here on many occasions. And, her slide about the many, many different residential developments being drops in a bucket was apt, because frankly, that bucket has been overflowing for a very long time. And, for me, I look at this file, I think it's a wonderful file. I'm so happy to hear that the developer is working with the community, and that's a huge step in the right direction. I'm also happy to hear that these transportation items will be dealt with through the TMP, or at least starting to be worked on after years and years of it being ignored. In good conscience, I can't support this file. I will not be supporting residential development in this community until I know that commercial amenities, walkable features, cycling features, road features, transit, these things are actually being addressed. This is sadly a beautiful neighborhood. However, it was built exactly the opposite of how we want to see our neighborhoods built across our city. It's the exact opposite of what we tried to achieve in our new official plan. So until I start seeing those pieces, I just won't be supporting further residential. I think this is a good step in the right direction. These conversations are taking place, but we need to start seeing action. These people have been waiting too long for it. So I digress, but I couldn't help but to weigh in for a moment.
Thank you, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Curry.
So I have a very high level question, and I just want to preface it by saying this is very similar to what we are talking about in Canada all the time. I thought that was quite funny, the phantom BRT, as that's something I have to tell the people in Canada that's what you refer to it as, because the BRT at March Road is something that people are wondering about. And I just want to say, so what our delegate said is you had 13,000 units coming, right? The 1 year that I was been on council in Jenna's place, we approved 5,100 units in Canada, all based on the fact that we would have this bus rapid transit coming up March Road. And when is that going to happen? But that is the basis of it. Oh, well, it'll be coming. And so my high level question is, so we have a planning act. So we have this application here, the planning act, it follows the planning act. You know, we wouldn't have a major argument other than the fact that the infrastructure isn't there, potentially the 15-minute neighborhoods is not there. And we have Bill 23 that has said what it said. We have a promise that the transportation master plan may have other things coming in it. But if we didn't approve this, it would go to the OLT, it would be turned over. And would the development charges then be enough to make sure we do all that we want to do here in Navan? And, you know, the same would apply to Canada. The concept being that we have these development charges built into these applications. Do they actually pay for what we need to have in terms of roads, bus rapid transit, sidewalks? Because otherwise we say, okay, we're not doing this yet until all the infrastructure is there and we have the money for it. And then it gets overturned at the OLT.
Mr. Chair, no individual site would provide enough funding for the development charge items that are related to support it. The development charges background study collects funds from projects across the city to fund a specific list of projects and priorities that are identified in the development charge background study. Those projects are fed into that process through the transportation master plan and the infrastructure master plan and the affordable networks and the affordability lens that is provided through that. I don't know if that answers the councillor's question, Chair, but on an individual basis, no application will fund those enhancements that are required. It is very much a pooling of resources to achieve those results over time.
And so our argument in terms of the Planning Act and refusing the application, that we couldn't argue that because that's just well known. Well, of course you can't afford all this infrastructure before you build buildings.
Mr. Chair, a developer in front of the OLT is entitled to look at the and to take into account the infrastructure that the city has planned over the long term. So it is something that they are able to point to as a justification for their development, Mr. Chair.
So because we have it in our plan, then it justifies their approval.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to say that it will necessarily be approved because I don't know what committee and council are going to do with this application. It is something that they are entitled to point to and ask the tribunal to take into consideration if the matter ended up in front of the tribunal.
It's fascinating because don't we approve the plans? So we create our own problems. You put it in the plan. All right. Well, I'm glad that I figured that all out here. Thank you.
I think the key is that our transportation master plan has to be an honest transportation master plan that speaks forthrightly to the resources, the amenities, the infrastructure that we actually intend on building. There's a Carling BRT that is justifying development down Carling. The baseline BRT, we're going to be dealing with a controversial file on that one within the next few months. And these are lines on a map that the developers are able to use to justify their developments. Sorry, Catherine, Councillor Kitts, will defer to Councillor Brockington.
I was just going to add to Councillor Curry's comments. It's like a chicken and egg situation where even in the non-suburban wards, you know, right in the heart of the urban core, we have the baseline rapid bus corridor is a good example, very similar to your March Road example, where we're seeing applications for some very large developments. And everyone wants to reference the future BRT, and rightly so, because I do believe this will be built, and I do believe it'll be a good transportation complement to these dense developments. But existing residents are saying, well, wait a minute, if we have development for the next 10, 15 years before these BRTs are developed, where's everyone going to park? Where are the people who have cars? Because the developers also don't want to build same number of parking. So I think it's kind of like driving a standard vehicle where you have to accept that there's going to be some infrastructure that's not there yet while we build these new developments. And there'll be some developments and infrastructure will have to be built up over many years. You can't have everything that you need all at once. But the frustrating part for existing communities is they don't think existing neighborhoods, existing communities can handle the influx of this new density. I think they can, but it's going to be rough in the first few years. So it's a very common situation that I'm hearing today that we see in my ward and other wards. And there's no sort of perfect equilibrium point where you can welcome more developments in lieu of the infrastructure that people perceive is absent or not there. So we're going to have this discussion more and more as we continue to intensify. But people do need to call out the lack of road infrastructure and other infrastructure gaps, because the onus is on us to make sure that we keep pace with that expansion. Thanks, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Kitts.
Yeah, just to wrap up quickly, I will challenge my colleague. I think it's not common what we're seeing here in Bradley Estates and Orleans South Navan because of the issue with the stalemate with the NCC on advancing our transportation network. So even if we had a windfall of money tomorrow, we cannot advance any of these plans we have. And I think that makes it different. But I just wanted to sort of signal what Tim Mark was saying. If we vote this down, we don't have a good chance at the OLT. And so I want to applaud the applicant for working with the community and making significant changes on this application. We're seeing a reduction of height, a reduction of units. They changed the materials they were using. They preserved mature cedar hedges to give more of a buffer. They changed the location of the garbage. Like, these are really good things. And I will be supporting this application because I want applicants to work with the community to bring forward a better application. And I think voting against it is sending the wrong message. However, we're talking about, marginal impact, 32 units today. I do think this conversation around the cumulative impact is very important because we will have other applications come forward for this area where it is a high number of units and perhaps the applicant is not working as well with the community. So I'm raising the flag today. I'm saying this is a signal for what's to come. But in this instance, you even heard, from the delegate from the community association, they are appreciative for what the applicant did on this file. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kitts. I don't see any other hands up. So we'll move through. There is the technical motion on the table to correct the ward on the cover page. Any further debate on that one? Is that carried?
Carried.
So the amended motion, yeas and nays, please.
Councillor Brockington,
Yes.
Councillor Curry,
Yes.
Councillor Dudas,
No.
Councillor Johnson,
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Councillor Kelly,
Yes.
Councillor Kitts,
Yes.
Councillor Lowe,
Yes.
Councillor Tierney,
Yes.
Councillor Troster,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gower,
Yes.
and Chair Leeper.
Yes, and I believe Councillor Drews.
Oh,
Yes.
my apologies, Councillor Drews.
Yes.
12 yeas, 1 nay.
All right, thank you very much to staff on that one. So I believe that will then bring us to our next held item, which is the 360 Kennedy Lane East. So on this one, we'll ask Ms. Ramirez to provide us with a presentation on the proposal. Once we've done that, if the Andrew Hannaford at MHBC would be prepared to address it, and then we'll move into delegations.
Sorry, Chair. Just,
Oh, sorry, Laura. Yep.
sorry, Chair, just a reminder that I have a referral motion on behalf of Councillor Luloff. So whenever you think it's apt, I'm happy to read that in.
You moving ahead with that?
Sorry, would you like me to proceed with that now?
So at this point, Councillor Luloff is indicating that if there are any further motions, we'll wait until after the delegations.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez, thank you very much. Please, what is this proposal?
Good morning, Chair, members of committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Lucy Ramirez, and I'm the planner and the file lead on the zoning bylaw amendment at 360 Kennedy Lane East. Next slide, please. The subject site has frontage on Kennedy Lane East, which is approximately 75 meters north of the property. The road intersects with Preston Drive, a major collector road. St. Joseph Boulevard is further northwest, approximately 350 meters. Next slide. So the subject site is presently occupied by a church, a portable, and a parking lot. The existing church will remain. Along Kennedy Lane East, there's a mix of uses and dwelling types. The south and east lane of Kennedy Lane East is characterized by detached dwellings, open space, and institutional uses. The north and west side of Kennedy Lane East is characterized by detached dwellings and townhouse dwellings. Next slide, please. So the site is well connected to a mix of land uses where daily and weekly needs can be accessed within a 15-minute walk. That includes shops, services, food, green space, and parks. Sidewalks are present on the east and south side, east/south side of Kennedy Lane East from Preston Drive to the vehicular access of Queenswood Ridge Park, 130-meter stretch. And there are sidewalks on both sides of Preston Drive. It's approximately a 9-minute walk to Centrum Boulevard where shops, services, and food can be accessed. And it's approximately a 15-minute walk to the grocery store on the corner of Place d'Orleans and St. Joseph Boulevard. There are nearby transit stops that link the site to Place d'Orleans, bus stop 2736 on the north side of Preston Drive at the intersection of Ridge. Can you go back one? River Ridge Crescent. So on bus 35, it's a 3-minute bus ride from here to Place d'Orleans 2C transit stop. So you can see the transit stop up there. And Place d'Orleans station is approximately 1.6 kilometers northwest of the site, approximately a 20-minute walk. And in the future, Place d'Orleans station will be connected to the LRT. It's part of the O Train East line. On this slide, you can see that the site is designated suburban neighborhood per Schedule A and B8 of the official plan. The site permits a mix of building forms and densities. Next slide, please. So the proposal supports compact development with a range of housing types, and the proposal will support active transportation and transit and reduce car dependency, enable people to live car light or car free. The 3-story stacked dwellings abut the street, the park, and the private way. It's blocks 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7, and 2-story dwellings, 2-story townhouse dwellings, block 5 and 8, abut detached dwellings with frontage on Mountainside Crescent and the Queenswood Villa Retirement Community. So here, you can't really see it, but I've identified which one is block 5 and which one is block 8. And these were originally proposed to be 3-story buildings, but the applicant reduced the height of those blocks to give a better transition to the adjacent uses. Next slide, please. So the site is currently zoned minor institutional zone subzone B, and the maximum permitted building height in this zone is 18 meters. The current zoning does not permit a planned unit development, which means 2 or more residential use buildings on the same lot, nor does it permit stacked dwellings or townhouse dwellings. The recommendation before you to consider is to approve an amendment to 360 Kennedy Lane East to rezone the site from I1B to residential 4th density zone subzone Z. urban exception XXXX Schedule YYY, as latter permits a mix of residential uses. The urban exception will permit the place of worship use to continue, a residential parking space rate of 0.75 per unit and a visitor parking space rate of 0.19. Next slide, please. Planning staff recommend approval of the zoning bylaw amendment at 360 Kennedy Lane East, and the proposal aligns with the official plan. These are select policies that support it. Next slide, please. So one way to increase housing affordability is to increase density and reduce parking requirements. Next slide, please. So here's a breakdown of the affordable units. There will be a total of 81 units proposed. They're going to be all rental and tenure. There's going to be 55 that will be at market rental rates and 26 that are to be affordable dwelling units. And 20 units are proposed to be barrier-free units. Next slide, please. So there are a total of 85 parking spaces proposed, 61 for residents, 15 for visitors, and 9 for the place of worship. So 6 of those place of worship parking spaces can also be used for visitor parking when they're not being used for the place of worship use. Paid parking spaces are going to be available on site for the stacked dwelling units. And if renters in the stacked dwelling units don't need the parking, then they don't have to pay for it. The parking is rented separately from the units. The market's going to decide who gets what. And renters can choose their residence knowing if it includes a parking space. Next slide, please. So there are studies that show that parking demand varies between households, neighborhoods, and over time for individual households, and smaller, lower income households located in accessible areas tend to own fewer cars. Next slide, please. So we heard some concerns about this proposal. The theme that emerged the most was that people were concerned about transportation and parking. People expressed concern that no traffic impact assessment was done. Further, that the cars that were going to be associated with the 81 new residential units, and people were worried that it's going to increase pressure on street parking and that new residents will misuse the adjacent parking lot that's in the park. Next slide, please. So there are 3 different triggers for TIAs, such as trips, location, and safety. The proposal did not surpass the threshold established in our guidelines for a TIA. And per our transportation modeling, it's anticipated that there will be an additional 25 vehicles in the peak hour. The traffic assessment team is going to continue to monitor the situation and implement corrective measures if necessary. Next slide, please. Or sorry, I'm going to move on to the point. The city has on-street parking restrictions, and residents can contact bylaw enforcement to minimize any spillover problems. Currently along Kennedy Lane East, there's a combination of no parking and time-limited parking. And a parking supply study was done to summarize parking considerations and justify a reduced residential parking space rate. I'll just say that parking is going to be limited, but there's going to be ample parking for bicycles, 122 spaces, and there are other measures within the parking justification study that lean on transportation demand management. And that's it.
Thank you very much for a great presentation. I think that's a good summary of many of the issues that are at play. I note that Councillor Curry has her hand up. Is it a quick clarification of something?
Yeah, just the corrective measures. What does it mean that traffic team corrective measures? What are those corrective measures?
So some corrective measures that could be done would be to eliminate parking on both sides of the street. That could be a corrective measure that could be done. Right now, there's one side that has no parking during the winter, and there's parking on the other side of the street.
So we'll come back to Ms. Ramirez after we've heard from the delegations. So first up, I would like to invite Andrew Hannaford at MHBC to make your presentation. Mr. Hannaford, you have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Great. Thank you to the chair and members of committee. I'll just share. Oh, sorry. If we could have the presentation put up as well. Yeah. Thank you. So my name is Andrew Hannaford. I'm an associate with MHBC Planning here on behalf of the applicant, who is Kindred Works. I'm joined today by Carly Forrester, a senior planner with Kindred Works, as well as Keenan Hewitt with KPMB Architects. We also have Wayne Swanson, with JR Studio, who are our landscape architects, and Deanna Green with BA Group, who are our traffic consultants for this file, who will be available to answer any questions, obviously, as traffic specifically is a big issue raised with this proposal. So this application proposes a zoning bylaw amendment to enable intensification of the site, including retention of the existing place of worship, the introduction of a planned unit development with 81 dwelling units in both stacked and townhouse forms. Of the 81 units, all are proposed to be rental units, and 31% are proposed to be affordable rental units. If we go to the next slide. So I want to thank staff first for their recommendation report and for the significant collaboration that has occurred since the initial pre-consultation meeting with city staff in May 2021. Following our initial meeting with staff, the application was submitted for zoning bylaw amendment and site plan approval in January. In April, we held a public information meeting with city staff and Councillor Luloff to gather community input and feedback on the proposal. These comments from the city staff and the public were then incorporated into our second submission, which was made in November 2022. We're pleased to be before the committee for consideration of our requested zoning bylaw amendment. We have reviewed the staff report prepared by Ms. Ramirez, and we're in agreement with the staff recommendations. If you go to the next slide. As noted in the staff report, the subject lands are located within the Queenswood Heights neighborhood with frontage on Kelly Street East and abutting Queenswood Ridge Park. The site is located within 15-minute walking distance of the St. Joseph Corridor and Orleans Town Center, as well as the planned LRT station at Place d'Orleans. The surrounding neighborhood consists of a predominantly low-rise residential uses, including a mix of single detached, duplex, and townhouses, which do range in height from 1 to 3 stories within the neighborhood. Next slide. The site currently consists of Queenswood United Church, which is significantly set back from the street, and the majority of the site is underutilized, consisting of surface parking and open space. Next slide, please. Quickly, as mentioned by Lucy Ramirez, our Otto's former official plan, which was applicable at the time of application, designated the site as general urban area, which permitted the full range of housing types and institutional uses as are proposed. The predominant form of intensification within the former official plan was ground-oriented multiple unit housing as proposed. The former official plan also spoke to allowing alternative development standards for affordable housing. In November, Ottawa's new official plan was approved by the province. The new official plan designates the site as neighborhood, again permitting a range of residential and non-residential uses, but specifically noting that the predominant built form is to be missing middle housing and innovative building forms. The neighborhood's designation permits low-rise buildings up to 4 stories in height, and the proposed development contains a mix of 2- and 3-story dwellings, both below the permitted height for the site. The new official plan also further prioritizes intensification, directing 10 to 15% of all new residential units to be affordable. The proposed development is in full alignment with the direction of the new official plan, as it provides for missing middle housing below the maximum permitted height, provides for gentle intensification as directed by the province and city, and provides for affordable housing and retention of the existing church on the site. Next slide, please. The site in the zoning is currently zoned minor institutional, again permitting place of worship, community center, retirement home, daycares, to a maximum height of 18 meters or 6 stories on the site. Our proposed zoning bylaw amendment seeks to rezone the site to residential 4th density. This would maintain the place of worship, daycare, and community center permissions, while also permitting the proposed residential uses. We have proposed site-specific yard setbacks, including 6-meter side and rear yard setbacks, and a 3-meter front yard. As Lucy had noted, the maximum height is being reduced from 18 meters to 14.5 meters for the stacked uses, 11 meters for the townhouses, and 15 meters for the place of worship. There's also 2 areas identified, and this was a direct result of community feedback, abutting the seniors' home to the north and the existing residences to the east, where the height would be limited to 8.5 meters, which is 2-story townhouses. We are proposing a minimum parking rate of 0.75 parking spaces per unit, with visitor parking spaces at 0.19, and the place of worship will additionally provide 6 spaces which can serve both uses on the site. I'll then pass it to Keenan on the architecture.
Thanks, Andrew. I see the timer, so I'll try to go through this quickly. If we could go to the next slide, please. As it was mentioned, the site's composed of a series of 3-story stacked dwellings, so 3 apartments on top of one another, 3-story townhouses and 2-story townhouses. The units are arranged around a central loop, providing access to each unit, and particular attention was paid to connectivity throughout the site through the design of pedestrian pathways, as well as a green spine through the middle of the site, to provide enhanced natural features and encourage a sense of community. The existing church, as mentioned, will be retained and dedicated parking provided. Blocks 5 and 8, again, as was mentioned, were reduced in height, now composed of 2-story townhomes to respect the height of the existing homes along Mountainside Crescent, as well as the Queenswood Villa retirement community to the north. And as Andrew mentioned, many setbacks have been respected throughout the site, again, paying particular attention to the existing residents retirement community, as well as the Queenswood Ridge Park. Next slide, please.
If I may, you're about halfway through the slide deck on slide 8 of 14. You are out of time. I'm just going to look at the committee to see whether they want the further details. Okay, go ahead, please. But please stick to the most salient points on each of the slide if you can.
Yep, thank you. This first slide illustrates one of the communal spaces that was designed throughout the site. Again, trying to cultivate a sense of community for residents and starting to highlight that green spine. We can go to the next slide. There's a series of 3-story townhomes, 3-story stacked dwellings and townhomes throughout the site, which provides sort of a gentle increase in density and plays into the affordability model that will be spoken to afterwards. Next slide, please. And then finally, recognizing the climate we're in, we're not shy to show this in a winter setting, but what this image highlights in particular is what you can see in the center of the image with the 3 doors. Each of the stacked dwellings will house an accessible unit on the ground floor. That would be a fully accessible designed unit, making for a total of 20 accessible units across the site. And I will pass it on to Carly for the next slide, please.
Hi, thanks everyone, and thanks Keenan for the pass. I won't be too long as I know we're over time, but I just wanted to reiterate that we have a total of 81 new units being proposed, 30% of which equaling 26 units at affordable rental rates at 30% at or below 30% of the median family income for the area. And the rest of the units will be proposed at market rate rental rates. Next slide, please. I wanted to focus on our sustainability goals as a corporation. The graph on the left illustrates our building's impact versus a typical code building project of a similar scale and type. As shown, we are able to reduce our energy use intensity by about 82%, just based on design currently. And it is our intent in the future, and it has been designed to allow solar panels in the future. As shown, this would actually add more energy to the grid than we'd be using, create a net positive energy outcome, which then plays into the 2 graphs on the right. In the middle, as shown, we're 97% reduced on the greenhouse gas emissions. And then we're positively impacting greenhouse gas based on if we add solar panels, and that's again due to adding clean energy to the grid. And then on the third, in terms of cumulative emissions over a 30-year period, a code minimum building would continue to add emissions year over year, and those would get higher and higher simply because of the way it's designed. Whereas because of our project with solar panels and the reduction it would have, we're actually removing greenhouse gases over time over a 30-year period. Next slide, please. And just to focus on some of our corporate goals, I won't focus on the top 3 because those are illustrated in the previous slide, but as a corporation, we're looking at having a minimum of 20% of units to be universally designed, which we exceed on this project, as Andrew and Keenan mentioned. Having 10% of all of our labor hours for all projects be filled by equity-seeking groups. And to quantify just not our social impact, our financial impact, but our environmental and social impacts, we're targeting.
If I could just ask you to wrap that up, please.
Absolutely. Just targeting a $4 return on a social return on investment. Next slide, please. And this is the last one. I just want to thank everyone for their time today and their additional time. And to conclude that we're putting forward a project today that I think meets the needs of the neighborhood by providing much needed affordable housing at a height and density that's not only compatible with the area, but also consistent with the city's official plan objectives and in close proximity to LRT transit that's under construction now. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. For those folks from Goba and elsewhere who are watching, I know I've mentioned it sort of the beginning of the term. The presentations might usefully skip some of the material that the city staff have gone through in their material. So I'll ask Councillor Luloff to kick us off, please.
Yeah, I've got some comments to make afterwards, so I don't want to completely mug myself here, but I do want to say that this is it's a beautiful project. The work that you guys have done on the architecture, on the placement, really do appreciate all of the work that you've done. Dealing with concerns of massing, of drainage. You did a really wonderful job responding to the needs of the community, and that certainly does need to be recognized. As you know, we do still have the outstanding parking issue. So just a couple of questions. We don't have to get into it. Just like a yes or no is fine. Have you been able to reach out to St. Helens Anglican Church to see if there's some sort of way that you might be able to enter into an agreement, for parking, sharing, or that sort of thing?
Through the chair, we haven't specifically reached out to the Anglican Church on an agreed parking, but we have reached out to them on this specific project, and they are supportive of the project to date. We can in the future continue to have the discussion on shared parking, but as of now, that has not been a conversation that's been had.
Has there been any discussion with OC Transpo about, perhaps entering into an agreement like we have on several other projects, where, in the affordable units, perhaps an Equipass agreement is brought into place to ensure that residents have that option to use public transit when it's available?
Through the chair, as part of our parking justification study that was done by BA Group, we have proposed a number of TDM measures, including of which would be something of an OC Transpo pass. So that is something that we are working towards for sure, for not just the affordable units, but the market units as well.
Okay, but that has not been done yet.
Through the chair, we just wanted to get through the zoning plan prior to having those formal conversations with OC Transpo to make sure that we are talking about a real project, not a.
Okay. Has there been any discussions, perhaps with virtual car sharing companies that might, increase the viability of the reduction in parking that you're looking for?
To the chair, yeah, we have on our project portfolio scale have had those discussions with car sharing apps, and we would look to put that into place here where possible.
Okay, so there is a plan to have car sharing on site?
It's not a formal plan as of now. It's one of the mitigation measures that we had as a TDM measure as the report was put forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lilith. Councillor Gower, or Vice Chair Gower.
Thanks, Chair. To me on this file, the big change is the reduction in parking spaces. And I think usually in suburban communities, we would see one space per unit. And in this case, it's about 0.75. And I'm trying to keep an open mind to this. So how are you justifying, or you must know something about market demand or desires of people who might be moving into this neighborhood. What's the data, or what's the information you're using to determine that you require 61 spaces for 81 units?
So through the chair, we do have Deanna Green, our traffic consultant, on the call. I'm wondering if she can respond to that question.
I can. The reduction in parking is hugely related to transportation demand management measure, in that we studied the travel patterns in the area, and we know that during the peak period, only 55 to 56 of the residents are currently traveling by automobile. We have really good peak transit numbers in the area. Those range from 32 to 35% during the peak periods of the day. So we've taken a careful look at that with respect to what's already happening in the neighborhood using survey data. And we believe a really key part in transportation demand management measure is to ensure that we don't oversupply the parking, so that residents are aware of what the parking supply is when they move to this area. And the developer will also make them very aware with respect to what their transit options are in the area, which are very good at this point and will only get better with the extension of that LRT. So we think that transit is a really viable option for residents in this area. And so based on the existing and future transportation context, and as a transportation demand management measure, we think that the proposed parking supply is appropriate.
Is there any data on car ownership? I imagine we're going to hear from a number of delegations because we have in the past for suburban development that most families in the suburbs own 2 vehicles. Do you have any idea, any data that would support or refute those numbers?
We didn't look into specifically what the car ownership is. Our work focuses on what the actual travel patterns are. So regardless of the number of vehicles, how are residents in this area traveling, by what mode of travel?
What about by reducing the parking, what impact does that have on affordability of the units? In other words, does having less parking result in the ability to charge less for monthly rent?
One of the transportation demand management measures is to separate that cost of parking. So residents are only paying for the parking as part of their rent if they require it. So it provides that option for lower rent if you don't have a vehicle and you're going to be traveling by other means such as active transportation or transit.
Okay, thank you. I'll have more questions for staff on this topic. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gower. Councillor Curry.
Thank you very much. That is exactly the topic I wanted to ask about. So there is a difference. We've had this conversation on this committee many times between driving and owning a car where you need to park it and store it. And that's been the conversation we've had in buildings where people just need a place to store the car that they're not really driving that much. So I don't think the data on who's driving is all encompassing here, sort of to Councillor Gower's point. But the other part of it is that when you separate the price of parking from rent, that doesn't necessarily mean people don't have a car. What they then do is park on the street. They don't have to pay for the parking. And that's the reality in Canada Town Center, where people don't want to pay for that extra charge for the parking. So they park on the street and they just keep moving their cars around. And they have this little routine of how they do that. So I guess I want to ask you, do you have any data on that? Who owns cars in this area? Because my understanding is that there's constantly cars parked on the street, which makes things dangerous. And how often people own a car and don't pay for the parking and park on the street? Is that data you can collect, or can we even know about? Because we know that's the reality on the ground.
It's pretty challenging data to collect in that you would have to be on site every day, and you likely would have to be surveying these motors to find out why they're parking on the street. So we think probably a better mitigative measure to address that would be to consider parking prohibitions along Kennedy.
I don't necessarily agree, but anyway, thank you for that comment. I see that this is a problem. It continues to be a problem in every single development application we have where we reduce the parking. I understand people want to encourage people to walk and ride their bikes. I get what people are trying to do. It's just that people don't want to do that. And so then they find other solutions that create other problems. Anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Curry. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. And to build on that point as well, I have a community that's exactly like that. It's a rental community and it has a 1-to-1 ratio of parking. And even then, that parking lot's actually underused because people don't want to pay for the rent increase to pay for that parking. And the point about the parking prohibition, Monica Crescent right across the street has a parking prohibition and all those cars park on Kennedy Lane. So I just want to know what are the mitigating measures that you've explored in addressing this issue?
With respect to the parking, likely to have monitoring in place with respect to what's happening along Kennedy as well as on the adjacent public streets. And then if there are issues, to consider future parking prohibitions.
I don't think that's going to help, because if we prohibit parking in Kennedy Lane, people are just going to park further west on streets whose name I don't remember, and or on Prestone or Prestwick, whichever one it is. So I just don't. I don't think these mitigative measures will help.
Thank you, Councillor Troster.
Hi, thank you so much. First of all, I want to say it really is a beautiful development. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I'd say we would die for this in Centertown, where this kind of gentle density, we don't always have the room for it. So we have so many towers. And there's a similar development on Walnut Court that was built in the 70s. It's very similar looking. And it's a really utopian community. It is really lovely. My question is though, I know that a portion of the homes are designed to be below market rent. And my question is if you have any data on how many people who would require a below market rent apartment would own their own vehicle? Because I know certainly in my neighborhood, that's not the case. So even though we say that realistically, a lot of people own cars in the suburbs, the folks who will be moving into this community may not be able to afford cars. So I'm just curious if we have any data on car ownership for people who rent below market unit rents.
I'll let Deanna answer that, but I would say that perfectly raises sort of our justification in some regard for the proposed parking reduction. We do see sort of across the board less parking demand when you have higher affordability levels in the development, just due to the income classes and socioeconomic factors of those users. But also just benefiting the site's location in proximity to Ottawa's recent investments in transit in this neighborhood. It really is a perfect fit with that regard for that. I'm not sure, Deanna, if you could speak to that question though.
I think you answered that beautifully, Andrew, and that this is a really friendly development for transit, especially in light of the future improvements with the light rail. There's great bus routes within 100 meters of the site. You can get anywhere across the city. There's excellent connectivity. So we do think that that's going to play into the demand for parking.
Yeah, I'll just say the Ottawa Community Housing Building at 811 Gladstone in my ward has partnered actually with electric car sharing. I think it's the first electric car sharing partnership. Anyway, I agree with Councillor Luloff. I would really encourage you to encourage those partnerships. I think that car sharing could sort of provide that gap to get people to transit. If it's still really slow waiting for a bus to actually get to transit station. And I know certainly when I first moved into Ottawa, I used car sharing for those 1 or 2 grocery trips a week that I needed to do. And that might alleviate some of the parking concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up for the applicants. Do members have any further questions for the applicants? No. So we do have about a dozen residents who are asking to speak to the committee today. We'll begin with Alan Perks, who I believe is online. And then Giselle Doyle will follow after Alan. Alan, welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm an Orleans resident. I lived on Boursier Drive, which is a couple of blocks away for 35 years. I'm a lead for the President's Task Force on Accessibility, which is a national panel of experts on accessibility under the Canadian Society for Civil Engineering. So I've been interacting also with community groups locally on matters related to accessibility. I'd certainly say from my view, the 360 Kennedy Lane is a welcome addition to the neighborhood. There's no question about it. 81 units, and in particular, the affordable and accessible units that are planned. I would simply recommend the city and the developers and the architects to adopt the universal design approach, which is, I'll say a little bit more later, but it's the evolving approach to accessibility, and it really uncovers all needs. It's really designing for everybody. But what I think is important is that if things are designed for universal design for full accessibility, units can be made fully accessible and universally designed now, but also the whole development can easily be adapted in future. And that's important because there are a lot of people with disabilities waiting for housing and care. And there are a lot of seniors like myself and my family, my wife, who will ultimately be looking for something in our own community. So there's really a lot of value in thinking about universal design as a basis for developments like this. The main issue I see, of course, other than the transportation and parking, which you're addressing, there is a real lack of affordable and accessible neighborhood housing, not group homes, but living in community, which is the future for so many people. Universal design addresses that. Universal design goes beyond simple accessibility. It goes beyond codes, and it's designed for all. And community spaces for neighbors and volunteers and caregivers can be worked into that whole approach to universal design. There are good examples around that my committee and I can refer people to, including Clark Roadhouse in London, the Field of Dreams in Elmira, and more recently a bungalow on Innes Road that was converted for wheelchair accessibility within 3 weeks by T. Bearish Homes, a very kind and thoughtful developer. It's not fully universal design, but it's in process of being fully adapted. The other point I'd like to make is our committee, which is a national committee of a panel of experts, not necessarily myself. I'm, believe it or not, a water resource engineer, not a structural engineer, but many of my colleagues are. But I do contribute the lived experience of living and working with people with complex disabilities requiring 24/7 care. One of our activities recently was to assist the CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, prepare and issue their universal design guide, which was issued 2 days ago. So I would highly recommend the city and the developers and the architects to really get a hold of that and go through it, because it's a great piece of work by CMHC, which funds a lot of affordable and accessible units across Canada. That said, my time is running low, so that was the main message I wanted to get across. Our panel of experts across country, they're university profs, they're the heads and senior people in major consulting firms across Canada and some government agencies. We circulate things and we provide input and information, and we would be more than willing to do that, in this case to the city, but more broadly in all of the city's activities. So I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to make this speech, and I'd like also to thank Councillor Luloff and Catherine Kitts, because they have encouraged me in many ways to move forward with accessibility, either houses or facilities in their own councillor areas. So that said, my time is up, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Alan. I know Councillor Luloff has a question for you.
Alan, thanks so much for coming out today. I too was very pleased to see the level of accessibility on this site. I just wanted to thank you very much for coming out to speak to this today, and for the continued work and advocacy on behalf of those with special needs. And I know that you really take this to heart. And thanks for coming out today. We really do appreciate it. And you're certainly an expert in the field. And I don't think that the issues that we're really dealing with today have to do with accessibility. I think that this is a model for ensuring that we're including accessibility in our neighborhood. I do really hope that we're able to overcome kind of the last hurdle here, so that we can make this a reality. So thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming out today and all your work in the community. We really appreciate you, Al.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Mr. Perks? Seeing none. Gisela Doyle, Ms. Doyle, you are up next. I think you're in the room. Good morning, Giselle. Welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. You've got 5 minutes to address the committee.
Good morning. My name is Giselle Doyle. I represent a group of Orleans parents that have been advocating for the rights of people with developmental and neurodivergent disabilities, particularly the rights to choose where and with whom they live with as independently as possible. On a personal front, with our support and that of a personal support worker, our 37-year-old son has been living independently at Beaver Barracks for 8 years in a below market rent bachelor apartment. So why, do you ask, is it so important to have these units available in Orleans? Here are 3 reasons. There are more. Because Orleans doesn't have any such units. As support for our loved ones, we are getting older, making it harder to provide him with our support. My son grew up here. We've been in Orleans since 1981. And that is where his extended family and friends are when we are no longer here. We finally have a developer and owner that is ready to provide some of these much needed homes. Over the last 12 years or more, I have been attending developers' proposals, meetings, speaking to counselors and commenting on proposals, asking them to include affordable and inclusive units in new developments, particularly near transit stations. The response I have been getting is, we are waiting for the provincial government to approve our official plan. Developers say we don't have to. As you know, this was done in November with modifications. Therefore, I implore you to accept this proposal, continue canvassing developers, providing incentives for them to provide this community with much needed affordable and accessible homes. Our only concern with this proposal relates to how our community identifies and assigns individuals to affordable units. Not all accessible units need to be affordable, Given community pressures, including an aging population, we recommend that out of those 20 accessible units, only 5 be designated affordable units, and that the other 15 accessible units be available at fair market rent. Of course, I'm thinking of our 18 families that are looking for housing for their developmentally or neurodivergent family members that can go upstairs, but they need affordable housing. This would leave 20 affordable units for the general population, including ours. I just said that. Please note the maximum benefit for shelter provided by the Ontario Disability Services Program for a single person is $522 a month. And the total benefits for shelter and living expenses is $1,228. I'd like to add, after listening to other comments about parking, our members do not drive. They rely solely on transportation. And that's why it's so important that we get affordable housing near transport. Thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. We'll just wait a second to see if there are any questions from members of the committee. And see none, thank you very much for your presentation today. Richard Rice is up next and has a presentation who will be followed by Jim Rycroft. Richard, I assume you're on, oh, you're in the room. Fantastic. Come on down. Okay. Good morning, Richard. Welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. We'll give you 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to make this brief presentation. It is with some regret that, first of all, I want to reiterate that this project is immensely unpopular in the area. We have a petition with no less than 850 signatures on it. who oppose this project on the basis of 14 different criteria. I have submitted this petition to your committee, and time does not permit me to go through this today. As a matter of context, what's happening here, this is a high density housing project that's proposed to be inserted into a low density community. And what works in an urban center doesn't necessarily, and in fact does not work in a suburban setting. Now, this project is being proposed to be inserted in our community between a children's playground and a senior's home. And there are a number of issues that arise from that, and I'm going to focus on safety. I have two slides here. The first one pertains to traffic. Kelly, if we could have that up, please. There we go. Bullet one just makes mention of what Councillor Luloff has already said in his comments in the report, that this proposal does not sufficiently address traffic and parking. 81 units would generate traffic by about 120 to 150 additional vehicles. Now that further to the discussion that was held earlier, this is in recognition of working families that commonly have two vehicles, and in some instances with extended families it could even be three. These vehicles would be funneled onto Kennedy Lane to and from a single exit point, which would then routinely require a left-hand turn into the only entry exit point at Prestone Drive at the top of a blind hill and on a curve. Thank goodness we haven't had more tragedies there at this intersection. Three is there is an endangerment to senior pedestrians in the area who use walkers and other assisted mobility devices due to the increased traffic. There's also endangerment to small children in the playground that borders the property due to increased vehicular activity. Now, with respect to seniors, I commonly see seniors going about these sidewalks in the area with walkers, with canes, with other devices. They don't move quickly. If they have to avoid a vehicle for some reason, it's problematic. The same with small children in our park. Even with the best adult supervision, children can't always be contained. 5, a drive or walk to the closest amenities at Place d'Orléans is 1.7 kilometers in distance on a steep, icy hill, which is hazardous in the wintertime. And I want to emphasize that we have very limited local bus service that is not reliable, and it does not have close access to the LRT. And the last point regarding this is the loss of a windbreak by the destruction of 21 mature trees, which abut and border the adjoining park by increased snow drifting and reduced visibility. And I also wanted to touch upon the environmental damage from the loss of these trees, but I cannot get into that right now. The next slide is entitled Parking. And again, I reiterate what Councillor Luloff has said, that the traffic and parking have not been sufficiently addressed. And I suggest to you that because of that, the proposal is incomplete. Staff proposes 61 parking spaces, but this is supported by 12-year-old data from the year 2011, which is out of date. Based on an average of 1.5 vehicles per household, estimated requirement is 120 to 150 spaces, a shortfall of 60 to 90 parking spaces or more, and I emphasize or more. The on-street parking is already limited because of inadequate space.
Richard, you're a little past time at this point, so.
Okay, I'll finish up quickly, sir. And there are no parking areas such as Monica Crescent. This would affect guests, users of the area for parking events, and also the many visitors that frequent the seniors' home in the especially on weekends. The result is, the bottom line here is, there's no place to park. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a well thought through presentation. Councillor Luloff has a question for you.
Thanks for coming out today, Richard, and for representing this group of 850 residents. I know that you've done quite a bit of work on this, and I know that you identified some concerns that that we were able to address with the applicants, but there are still some that are outstanding. I'm wondering, given the context and your long tenure living in the area, we've got a park with a splash pad, a rink, a ball diamond, a massive children's park, a sliding hill, a dog park, a football field. The fact that Monica, has a parking interdiction and only one spot per unit, which is the bare minimum, I think, what we're asking for. Can you, as somebody who lives nearby, can you describe, what the parking situation looks like, say, in the summertime when in good conditions, so not even in the wintertime, but in the summertime when there's a ball game going on or a football game?
In a word, Councillor, crowded. It's my wife and I live on Mountainside Crescent. It's not uncommon to see cars wrapped all the way around Kennedy on the press zone and even on our street. Even at the present time, there is insufficient parking, especially at peak periods when events are being held in the park. The situation that would, I'll try and put this succinctly, the addition of this intensified housing development would take the local parking situation from very bad to totally unmanageable.
All right. Thank you very much for coming out today. We do really appreciate it. I believe that you have submitted the petition so that it's available to anybody that wants to see some of the other outstanding concerns that you raised. What do you say to the suggestion that weekend parking is 6 hours on street and enforceable by a bylaw, and street parking the rest of the time is 3 hours? As somebody who lives in the area, do you have confidence that Bylaw will be able to monitor this and to ensure that people aren't parking longer than they should be? As somebody who lives on Mountainside, the next closest street, do you have that confidence?
Not the least, sir. Not in the very least. It's simply unmanageable for the from the point of view of the people who would require parking. It would require them to rotate cars around and to do the sort of thing that was described a little while ago in this meeting. It would involve a lot of expense and time for enforcement. People get very angry about getting parking tickets. I'm sure you do, sir.
What do you think of some of the mitigation ideas that have been proposed today? Things like working with OC Transpo, working with a car sharing company, engaging with the Anglican Church for a parking sharing situation. Perhaps looking at some engineering on the street to have kind of raised parking adjacent to the street so that the street stays open and there'll be parking on the side. Do you think that some of these or any of these will help to ameliorate the situation that's currently in the neighborhood?
Well, Councillor, I believe those are all interesting ideas that are worthy of discussion, but theory to plan to practice is a very long distance, and I don't see it right now. I've taken the bus for many years, and I've seen its transition to what it is today, and it still has a long ways to go. One of the things that I'm very disappointed in is the emphasis that has been put on the LRT and the lack of emphasis that has been put on the simple measure of getting to the LRT to use it. And that's one of the factors that has been given lip service, but in practice, gosh, you go out there on any cold morning at the end of our street and see the people shivering for a bus that hasn't come. They're the ones that can really tell you.
Okay, two last questions for you, I suppose, then, and I guess they're really part of one question. How reliable is the transit along that street that would take you to LRT? And two, if the bus doesn't come and you have to get somewhere on time, how long would it actually take you in the wintertime to walk down that hill and get to a future LRT stop at Place d'Orleans, which I can imagine is something that you've probably done in the past?
I have, sir. Given the fact that I'm now a senior, I would not chance going down that hill on foot. While the city tries its best, it's still icy, slippery, and pedestrian traffic is hazardous at best. As to time and distance, I couldn't address that.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions from any of the other members. So Richard, thank you very much. I do appreciate the ribbon today. Slava Ukraini. Our next speaker will be Jim Rycroft, who will be followed by Deborah Dunfield. Good morning, Jim, and welcome to Planning and Housing Committee. We'll give you 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. Good morning. I've lived on Kennedy Lane East since 1986 when my family and I bought the house. And I'm here on my own, but I think I express the sentiments of the majority of my neighbors. So I'd like you to imagine you arrive in Ottawa and you're going to buy or rent a house. You go to the real estate agent alone. He offers you a house. You say, fine, I'll take it. Or you perhaps with your family look at several homes the agent proposes, pick the one that's best suited. So I'm going to ask you to look at this through the lens of risk management. Let's note to begin that the city has a plan for intensification, Orleans Corridor Secondary Plan Study. And I've hyperlinked it in my written presentation, but it clearly shows that this is bounded by the corridor between St. Joseph and Jeanne d'Arc along the LRT line. The church property is outside these boundaries. So if you're looking at where the city designed intensification or wants intensification, that's it. This isn't. The consequential risk is the application, although it's for four-story housing, although it's not for four-story housing, it would allow it to happen in future. It's restricted to 3 at the present. But even so, it's in conflict with the character of the surrounding 2-story environment and carries the potential for a future application to add another level, bringing it to 4. Because as I understand it, you do have a process to add units subsequently, although you have to make application. Here we have an application to intensify housing outside the city design corridor in a manner decided by the development company for the United Church, not the city, not the community engagement before this option was put forward. The solution is focused on resolving the church debt issue. However, it does not achieve the appropriate balance with community concerns, particularly about safety. The result, in my view, would be to worsen the traffic and parking situation on Kennedy Lane, near Prestone into a nightmare. That's an adjective often used by those describing not only what it is now, but certainly what it would be in the future. In any event, it does not fit the city plan. This misses a unique opportunity, I suspect, to develop the property to meet the goals of all concerned. Is it the only option? Is it the best one? Back to my opening scenario. Is it you or your real estate agent in charge of where you live and what you live in? Here, is it the United Church or the city planners who determine what's best fit for the property? I see a red flag on the city document at page 21. Look at the heading Risk Management Implications. The conclusion is there are no risk implications. This, despite the paragraph above, quoting Ward 1 Councillor Matt Luloff, and I quote, "These unresolved issues put community buy-in at risk in an already established neighborhood, and while I don't believe they're insurmountable, the applicant should continue to work with city staff and the community to resolve these issues before occupancy," end of quote. Pages 32 to 41 of the document list numerous issues that concern members of the community and which they categorize as risk. It's already been mentioned, increased traffic congestion from an influx of vehicles, inadequate parking, and if developed, these are drawn from the petition. And my neighbor, Richard Rice, has talked about this. City staff recommend that you pass the bylaw amendment, but they have dismissed the identified risk put forward by our ward councillor and the concerned community members. Otherwise, the report could not possibly have concluded that there is no risk. Now let's look at the terms of reference, your terms of reference. Ensure coordination and consultation with other standing committees and departments where responsibilities overlap on matters and issues relevant to the mandate of more than one committee. Direct quote. So what we do is need coordination, and frankly, I'm not seeing it. In my written submission, I offer a number of ways that it might be approached. I have a good deal of time with the Legion and Legion Housing, so I've given you the link in Legion Seniors Housing Center of Excellence on the written proposal. I urge you to take a look at it. We also have two precedents in the neighborhood where we've had that engagement, we've had a successful result. One is the crescent behind us, where every last person backing onto the property, which is immediately adjacent to the park, was required to sign off before the city would in fact allow it to happen. Everybody signed, it happened, everybody's happy, and we now have the successful crescent adjacent to the park. The other example and precedent is the seniors facility right beside us. Originally, I believe 5 stories, put down at 1, and now it's working very well. I have other suggestions. They are in my written submission, but I urge you to turn down this one as is. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out today, Mr. Rykoff. What other suggestions do you have besides seniors housing based on the Legion approach that might be explored?
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Now, I've mentioned I've been looking at it along with what the Legion does, but the Legion, it does partnerships. So others can use partnerships as well. I have, for example, Abbeyfield House Society Charity. So if you go to any one of these organizations, they'll work in partnership, municipalities, residents, and so forth. The Legion has, for example, 126 developments that is done in cooperation after consultation. That model, and I've put a booklet of 72 pages that the Legion uses as a template to be successful, is something that you might want to look at. And even where somebody has gone to the Legion and then say gone to Abbeyfield, they'll have 2 ways of viewing the same situation to meet the need. Where does that need come from? The need is identified by the city. It's not identified by the people who want to generate the cash, which quite rightly they're intended to do. Legions do that as well. There are very, very many cash poor, property rich Legions. But the reason they don't get pushback on their developments is they consult, communicate, integrate. A couple of things the church could do. For one thing, it's not a particularly good use of the property, I would suggest. And there are options, for example, time sharing with another church, the Anglican Church. I approached the Anglican Church and said, so what if this congregation came and wanted some of your time? They didn't say no. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but I think you have to ask and see if you could develop the whole property and not have the church remain as a very large imprint on a property that could be more successfully developed with better planning. The other things that you can do is look at the care facility now. And I went and I talked to the people there, and I was talking to a personal support worker. What she told me is, and I think we all know this, when you live in the community, you want the people you care for to be close by so that you can visit. Now, this care facility has a certain limited capacity for care, and when you exceed that, you have to go somewhere else. At present, they go to Ogilvie Road, it's 11 kilometers away, and you're now away from your friends and family, and they now have to commute to see you. There's a great need, and I think some of it will be met by the housing that you've talked about or considered before, to have assisted living and care and so forth. But is there not enough to justify additional resources adjacent, for one, to this current facility, Queenswood Villa, to allow people to age in place? And that, by the way, is one of the concepts that the Legion tries to do. British Columbia in particular has been very successful. So those are just a couple of examples, and I'd very be pleased to have any of you go into my written presentation. I've given you all comment authority. Push it back to me and I'll address it and come up with some resources for you. But thank you for the question.
Jim, thanks for coming out today for your thoughtful presentation. And thanks for your service.
Jim, I don't see any further questions for you, so thank you for your presentation today. Deborah Dunville is up next, who will be followed by Rosemarie McLennan. Good morning, Deborah.
Good morning.
You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Dunville, and I'm a resident of Mountainside Crescent. I want to start out by saying that the people who would inhabit the development at 360 Kennedy Lane are more than welcome in our neighborhood. They are not the problem. It's the buildings that are being proposed that are the problem. Our crescent is a one-block community of 30 families who know and support one another. The proposed development backs onto our street and will, as currently configured, adversely impact the quality of our community. It is a shame that the church that is leading this development chose not to consult with the community. I'm going to focus on a couple of issues. Building height is the first one. Part of the proposed development will back directly onto existing 2-story single-family homes on Mountainside. One of our concerns is that the new buildings will tower over the existing homes. The land being developed is quite hilly, and we believe that any development of this land should start at the same grade level as the existing homes on Mountainside Crescent. The second concern we have is that every spring the families at 1380, 1382, and 1384 Mountainside suffer from recurring flooding as a result of the configuration of the church land behind their homes. To date, the church has refused to address this yearly flooding issue. And in the material provided by the developer, there's nothing to address this flooding issue. While we were pleased to see that the proposal has reduced the height of the buildings backing onto Mountainside from 3 to 2 stories, we are still concerned about the height. We feel that it is critical that the Planning and Housing Committee ensure that buildings which back onto Mountainside Crescent should be no taller than the homes on Mountainside. For example, you don't start a building on a berm or a hill that is higher than the ground level of the homes on Mountainside. I'm going to talk about parking, which you've heard a lot about already. And for me, I look at this and I see 20 families who will go to the development and they will be forced to live without vehicles or have a vehicle and have to figure out where to park it. It may be in line with the thinking of car light or car free, but it's not in line with the reality of living in the Orleans community. Many of our families have more than one car, and that's because they need it to live and work in the area. It's really disheartening to see that city staff used data from 2011 in order to justify their response that the 61 parking spaces for residents are sufficient for 81 families. On pages 33 and 38, they referred to 12-year-old data in order to defend this position. The fallacy of using 12-year-old data is especially evident when they talk about public transportation. Orleans used to be a high user of public transportation. The introduction of the LRT resulted in many people stopping using public transportation because it takes longer today to go from my place to downtown than it did before the LRT was introduced. And then the impact of COVID on our community as well. In addition, public transportation is designed to get people from their homes to the downtown. It is not designed to move people within our community to where the community centers are, the grocery stores, and the shops are located. So I'd like to have this deferred in order to ensure that the developer will develop the land at the same grade as exists on Mountainside and have current 2022 data used in dealing with the parking requirements. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm looking to see if there are any questions for you from members. And seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. Rosemary McLennan, you're up next, followed by Jim Brown. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Thank you very much. First, wish to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee. My name is Rosemary McLennan, and I'm here as the chair of the Property Development Committee and as one of the trustees of Queenswood United Church, which is a registered charity. It is the property of our church that is the subject of the zoning bylaw amendment application. I'm also one of the 3 rotating chairs of council, the council being our governing body. I'm speaking today on behalf of our church community in strong support of the proposed rezoning and the property development project at our location. Perhaps a brief introduction of who we are is in order. Our congregation is made up of individuals who are either close to or in retirement, although we know that word is often a misnomer. It certainly is at Queenswood. Many of us have simply moved from pursuing our careers and raising our families to volunteering at our church, focusing our time and energy on the needs of both our faith community, but also our local community and even international as well. Queenswood United has been a community partner for many years, responding to community needs that have been an important part of our ongoing congregational purpose. Queenswood provides ongoing support to local organizations such as our Community Resource Center, the Miriam Center in Orleans, and Center 507 downtown. At Queenswood, we have been engaged in active reflection of what more we have to offer our community for quite some time. This development project had its roots in our foresight study back in 2013. So we're going back 10 years, during which we considered alternative futures for our faith community. We continued our exploration of our future purpose as we listened to community organizations in Orleans about their needs, and then looked at ourselves as to what we had to offer to address those needs. That work led us to generate 4 initiatives relative to our future purpose. Of those 4, our primary theme emerged, and that was the provision of affordable housing in Orleans. This project is a way for our church to provide much needed rental housing, both affordable and market rate in nature, with at least, as you know, at least 30% of units being affordable, and to also continue to have our church be part of the community. We will continue to be active in the community and to provide space for social connections and for community partners as well. We have done so for many years, and we look forward to engaging in partnerships in the future to address community needs. Our church sees itself as an enabler for continued community growth. In fact, an option currently being explored is the provision of a community center in our chapel building to support the needs of the local community, including both new and current residents. That said, Queenswood United Church acknowledges our limitations as a small faith community in terms of our internal resources. We would need to seek partners to develop and run such a community resource. Our role is as enablers. We know that there are many in the community who have skills and abilities to assist in the actual building of community after proposed construction is finished and once new residents have arrived. One word about our intent. The project objectives do not include the growth of our congregation. That, of course, would be a bonus and a welcome one. However, the actual intent is to enable an opportunity for the community that eventually will become a legacy. We have submitted written material that demonstrates support for the development with over 278 signatures. There are considerable number of local residents that support the project for a variety of reasons. In summary, we are proud of this proposed development project in terms of its purpose and its design, with its focus on the environment, energy efficiency, and accessibility. It is my understanding that indeed it aligns well with the city housing plan. It will be a place that folks will be proud to call home. We are also proud to be part of the initiative that the United Church of Canada has taken to enable congregations to steward church property for the common good. That is what we are all about in Queenswood as a community partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. There are a few questions for you, starting with Councillor Troster, then Councillor Gower and Councillor Luloff.
Hi, Rosemary. Thank you so much for being here. And I just want to say that, you know, it really is the wave of the future to have church organizations, nonprofits, in some cases, labor unions take on developing affordable housing on extra land that you have. So I really applaud this project. I was just wondering if you could speak to the definition of affordability that you will be using for those 30% of the homes that you say will be below market rent. What is the threshold that you're planning on using?
Actually, the church does not have a role in that, of course, and I know that the whole definition of affordability it certainly is a evolving definition, perhaps, but that decision is not within our realm.
Okay, I can ask city staff or the applicant after, but thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Okay.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for presenting at committee and clarifying the objectives of the church, the research and work that's gone into this, and echo Councillor Troster's comments about how important the work is that churches of all denominations across the city are doing in addressing issues of housing and homelessness. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for all you've done over the decades in Queenswood Heights. You've certainly been a pillar of the community. We've definitely appreciated everything you've done. And this is a very exciting project. And I'm sorry that we still have this one last outstanding hurdle that we need to cross in order to get there. I think this is going to be a wonderful addition to the community. I think the architecture is beautiful. I think the way that it's set up is gorgeous. I'm so glad to see the affordability aspect in there. It's going to allow you to, breathe new life into the property, into your church, and ensure that you're meeting your mandate by better using your property. I have lots of friends and parents of friends that grew up at that church. I've been to weddings there. It's a beautiful space. And I just want to thank you for all of your work in the community. I certainly do support the project on the whole. And I'm just looking for a way to ensure that we have complete community buy-in by addressing the last issue that we have today. So it's no slight against the United Church whatsoever. I see great value in the work that you're doing. I'm excited about this project. We just have one last thing that we got to do before I think we should give it the green light. I'm not on this committee. I don't have a vote today, but I just wanted to express my appreciation for the great work that you've done and that you continue to do.
Very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Luloff. I don't see any other questions for you. Thank you very much for your presentation today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Jim Brown will be our next presenter, followed by Serena Sodi.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can. Thank you very much and welcome to the committee. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you to the council for allowing us to speak today. I'm Jim Brown. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Spring Living and Retirement Communities. and also owner of Queenswood Villa Retirement Community adjacent to the proposal. A letter has been circulated to the council members. I just wanted to cover off two main points in there that were a concern to us. Presently, the subject site includes Queenswood United Church, a large green space, a roundabout for vehicular traffic, as well as a large parking lot on the south side of the site, all at a considerable distance from the existing retirement complex. The current condition provides for a tranquil environment for the retirement residents by ensuring their privacy, as well as providing direct and immediate access to abundance of green space, which is incredibly beneficial to them. The redevelopment as currently proposed raises two main concerns, which we've tried to discuss with the applicant, but have been unsuccessful at furthering after our initial contact. As you're aware, the applicant is requesting a zoning bylaw amending to an R4Z zone, a designation that encourages more dense infill development with suburban low-rise settings. The current I1B zone, however, only allows for low-density residential uses in the form of single detached and semi-detached homes. The proposed change creates an opportunity for the applicant to build walk-up apartments, triplexes, and townhomes. Though we generally support general intensification of urban service land, this change and the increased density it brings in its current form will greatly and negatively impact the residents of the existing seniors community by creating challenges of noise and traffic, as well as safety concerns for the residents, which could have been reasonably assured would not occur with the current zoning. Secondly, as it relates to the specific plan circulated, the proposal places residential townhomes block 8 and a large parking lot directly adjacent to the retirement home. This will effectively eliminate the existing landscape buffer the residents currently enjoy, while exposing them to an increased noise and vehicular traffic. A more prudent plan may be able to include a tie-in road that creates a distinction separation and improves vehicular circulation between the north side of the new development and our retirement community. We encourage the applicant to engage in further discussions with us so as to reach a resolution for the benefit of all. However, at this time, without the benefit of such discussions, we cannot and would expect that you would not support the proposal in its current form without consultation with us on behalf of the health and well-being of all the residents of Queenswood Villa and the greater community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. You raised some valuable points that I'm sure will be discussing over the course of our conversation with staff. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move to Serena Sodi, who will be followed by Dean Tester. Speaker's not on. Mike's test. Somebody's going to
Yeah, someone needs to mute their computer.
check.
Okay, how's that?
I apologize. We're just having a little bit of aha. Caitlin was saying it's his computer. It's not. My audio's not on. I apologize. Serena, welcome to the Planning and Housing Committee. I think we have our technical stuff in order. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. No problem. So hello, my name is Serena Sodi. I am a resident of Orleans East Cumberland Ward, and I've lived in Ottawa for almost 10 years now. I'm speaking in favor of this application with the current affordable housing crisis and the climate emergency. Developments like this are really beneficial and quite important at this time. I understand that there have been concerns raised about parking. However, I really don't think it's being taken into account by the people who've made these complaints, that the people who are wanting to live in these walkable neighborhoods don't have 2 to 3 cars per family, and that prioritizing space for cars instead of accessible and affordable homes for the community during an affordable housing crisis is generally just severely disappointing. There's been a lot of talk about, who these developments will harm, and it's people with cars, but we haven't really talked about who it's going to help. And I think that's really important as well. And as mentioned, it's a walkable neighborhood. There's grocery stores, there's schools, there's amenities. It's really disappointing, honestly, to just see all of the negative comments, just mostly about parking, when I really don't think that's going to be a huge issue. And in summary, I strongly support this development. I really hope the Planning Committee will vote in favor of it. I would love to see more developments like this in my neighborhood, and I do live very close by. So thank you.
Serena, thank you very much for your submission. Are there any questions from members of the committee? I don't see any, so thank you very much for coming today. We have Dean Tester is up next, followed by Joseph Ostrovsky. Dean, I think you're online.
Good afternoon, everyone. Clock just hit 12 o'clock, so I guess we're afternoon now. Thanks so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm strongly in favor of this development. This is affordable housing, it's missing middle, it's environmentally friendly, it's transit oriented, it's very close to rapid transit in Orleans. A reduction in parking in developments like this is something that we all want to see. And in fact, I'll refer to the surveys we sent out at Make Housing Affordable during the election. Overwhelmingly, the folks who responded, who are on this committee, 5 of you said that you supported getting rid of parking requirements entirely on developments. And I think only 1 of you said that you did not support that. So, we know there's broad consensus on what to do here. And I appreciate Councillor Luloff's comments, and I had a chance to speak with him about this, that, he supports this development, and it really is such a great project that we need to support. And the one piece he's frustrated with is the parking piece. And I certainly understand that, because he's got to contest with the folks in the neighborhood who are upset about the parking situation. And it sounds like there is an existing situation that needs to be mitigated, but I don't know why we need to punish the folks who want to live here for existing issues that seem to have very little to do with them. One thing that I'll say for me is that this development is pretty personal, because I live in a development that looks just like it. I live in Barrhaven. Councillor Lowe knocked on my door. He knows where I live. And he's seen the community that I live in, and it's townhouses that look exactly like these. It's a small community of 100 or so townhouses. And I can tell you, there's been no crisis in my community. There's no parking crisis. There's no problem. There's no traffic crisis that came as a result of the development in my community. We also have less than 1 parking spot per person, I believe. So these communities exist everywhere, and they don't create these types of problems. And I would say that no matter what type of development this was, no matter how much parking there was, there are always folks who come to these meetings and say we need more. There are always folks who come to these meetings and say buildings are too tall. And it's going to impact existing homeowners. And very rarely represented are the voices of the people who will live in these buildings and who will benefit from these homes. And very rarely do we think about the impact of what happens if we don't build this. Because if we don't build this, you're talking about 30 people who stay on the wait list for affordable housing, which is around 12,000, I believe, in Ottawa. So we have an absolute crisis in the city that we need to get people off these wait lists and into homes. So, this isn't social housing per se, but my understanding is that the affordable rates are very, very good at this build, and we're very supportive that they've gone above and beyond what inclusionary zoning would ask, what is legally required. They've done a great job here with this. So. And then the other piece of this is, if we're concerned about traffic in this neighborhood, we're concerned the transit's not good enough. Well, respectfully, this council has supported no property tax increase, right? Our inflation is 7, 8, 9, 10% for the past few years. Our property tax hikes have been 1 or 2%. And that's well below the rate of inflation. Property owners have been getting tax cuts effectively for the last decade. And our roads are in disrepair. Our transit is badly underfunded. And instead of fixing our property tax problem and fixing these infrastructure problems, we're saying, okay, well, let's just block development. That'll fix it.
30 seconds.
But that of course doesn't fix our problems, right? So these problems exist independently of whether or not this new build gets built. It's a wonderful project. And in conclusion, I'd ask that you all support it and think about what happens if we don't build it. You're talking about 80 people who are looking elsewhere, and they're probably looking outside of our city, and they're probably still using our roads and infrastructure and not paying property taxes. So that's a challenge for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tester. Are there any questions? Matt?
Thanks so much, Dean. I really did appreciate our conversation, and I appreciate your advocacy. I think you do a great job, and you certainly speak very well on this. I think that the core of the issue is that no one wants to block this development. I think that the question is that what we're looking for is for what you've got in your development, and that's 1 parking space per unit in an area that already has a parking problem. So yes, well, in another area or in this area, if there were conditions right now where there wasn't already a parking issue, that this would make total sense. I think that everybody's really excited about what this project can do, and in creating affordable spaces and in creating accessible spaces. I certainly support that. But what we're looking for is the same conditions in which your development was built, and that's providing at least the bare minimum of 1 space, which I think can be achieved. I think that can be achieved not necessarily on the site. I think that we can work with the Anglican Church. I think that we can work with the surrounding area. I think that there are some things that we can do when it comes to things like communauto with OC Transpo. I don't think that these are insurmountable. So I don't think that the question today is, approve or not approve. I think that everybody around the table certainly sees the value in this, and I certainly want to see it move forward too. But what we want to do is get to where you're at. So I mean, just to ensure that there's at least 1 spot or 1 spot only, and I think that can be done with some partnerships. But I appreciate you coming out and chatting with us today. I think that you do a great work as an advocate. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. And if I could just speak to that very quickly. The one thing that I would put back to you is the parking.
I want to avoid sort of going back and forth on debate. So just a caution to Councillor Luloff. Thank you very much for your presentation today, Dean. I don't see any further questions.
Okay, I would have loved to have finished that sentence, but thank you.
Thanks. Moving on to Joseph Ostrowski, followed by Lee Honeywell. Joseph, I see you on screen. Welcome to Planning and Housing. You have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee.
Thank you. So I'm here in support of the project. I do not live in the neighborhood, but obviously without the construction of more housing, I'm also unlikely to at the current rates. So this is the sort of low-rise gentle intensification that matches the surrounding neighborhood. There are similar townhouses in the area. It's not just 2-story single-family homes, as some people have said. This is something that has also been delayed a bit. I believe that the initial plan suggested that it would have shovels in the ground by this fall, and now we're just seeing it come in front of Planning Committee right now. And this is building purpose-built rentals, which is exactly the sort of thing that we want to see. We have a vacancy rate in Ottawa of 2%, which is very low, which increases rents. And it's also the sort of desperately needed affordable housing that we need in the community, in Ottawa in general. The 30% of the units are going to be 79% of MMR in the area, which is significantly lower than the average rents in Ottawa. And just speaking to the parking that was mentioned, that I mean, first of all, every additional parking space that's added means that we have to reduce the number of units that are there. And since the number of affordable units are proportional to the amount of units that exist, so we just have to take that into account that any time that we shift the existing, that we shift the proposed housing into parking, we're reducing the number of units that are going to exist. And as well as I'm a student who lives inside the Greenbelt, and it takes me a lot longer to reach downtown than it does from this development. I live in Nepean, and it takes me about an hour to get to downtown during the best of times. This development, I looked, it would take about 40 minutes at the moment, and that's only going to get better with the LRT. I think there are a lot of people who would be very glad to live in a development like this without a car, myself included. You know, many people do live without cars, many students in particular. And as well, if we want better transit, we have to increase density. You know, one of the big obstacles to transit is having just people being too spread far apart. By intensifying an area, we actually can work on improving transit in that way by encouraging more people to use it in more frequent buses. Even apart from that, just as other people have mentioned, this is a great project from the perspective of you know, the climate emergency, the housing emergency. We have the solar panels there, and with the ability to have solar panels there, there's the ability to have geothermal heating and cooling, I believe was mentioned when I read the proposal. It's close to a lot of amenities. And so just in my opinion, this is the sort of development that sort of every plan that the city has made, that it all comes together to encourage this sort of project where we can get affordability and we can get kind of action on densification for climate change and for affordability, and just potentially, like I said, improving transit in the area with intensification. So I strongly encourage council to support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the delegation. I'm taking a look around to see if anyone has any questions for you. And I don't see any from members. So thank you very much for your delegation today, Joseph. Lee Honeywell will be followed by Josh Giroir. Lee, come on. Are you, I take it on screen?
Yeah, ready to present. Thank you.
There you are. You have 5 minutes to address the committee. Please go on ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, folks, my name is Lee Honeywell. I'm a resident of River Ward. I grew up in Ottawa, and I moved home in 2020 after many years away from Ottawa. But my family's actually been in the Ottawa area since 1809. However, I don't think that gives me any more of a right to have an opinion about housing matters than someone who's a new Canadian, a refugee, or someone who's just moved to the city from elsewhere in Canada. I'm a volunteer board member of the community nonprofit Make Housing Affordable Ottawa, but I have no relation to the developers or financial stake in this project or any other real estate projects. I just like density and want us to build more housing. I'm speaking in favor of this application as I think it represents the kind of gentle densification I want to see more of in Ottawa to combat the dual climate and housing crises we face as a city and as a country. I think it's a really lovely development. It's very modest. I'm pretty sure there are single family monster houses near my bungalow that are significantly taller than this project. It's a great place to add housing density. There's lots of public schools, grocery stores, a library, community center within walking distance. I understand that there have been a lot of concerns raised about parking, but I really would encourage people to use your imagination and imagine what life is like without a car. I actually spent nearly 2 decades as an adult without owning a car, and this location is near numerous bus routes with all of the caveats about OC Transpo having issues, a 20-minute walk of the future Orleans LRT stop. Not everybody needs to have cars, and we don't need to build all housing to be car-centric. I'd love to see car sharing at this building as well. I'm a longtime user, literally 2005, I started using Zipcar. I wanted to add as well how much I appreciated Mr. Alan Perks's comments. As our population ages in general, I think a lot of folks are going to be really sad to find out that in decades of underbuilding, missing middle housing like this development, we've also underbuilt accessible housing where people can age in place in their existing neighborhoods. People are going to have to leave their neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that they've come to love over decades, because they can't find smaller and modest and accessible housing. I also really appreciated and wanted to echo Giselle Doyle's comments as a member of the neurodiverse community myself. I'm thrilled that this development provides much needed accessible housing, both at market rate and below market rate units. One of the other presenters spoke about his concern that one's real estate agent might choose where one might live. I think that's really ignorant of the housing crisis facing Canadians today. People aren't working with real estate agents, they're working with roommates because they can't afford places to live. I can only assume that the folks speaking against this development haven't had friends or loved ones struggle with accessing affordable housing over the past couple of years, because it's really tough out there, and I would like to see this development get built without further delay. In summary, I strongly support this development. I hope the Planning Committee will vote in favor of it without further delay, because as we know, delays increase costs and we are in a housing crisis. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your delegation. I'm looking to see if there are any questions from members, and I don't see any. So thank you very much for being here this morning. We'll move on to our next speaker and last speaker, who is Josh Girard. And Josh is just joining us now on Zoom. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Sorry about that.
No worries at all.
Okay. I'm here as a resident of Mountainside as well, and I've got concerns also about parking. I'm sorry that I missed the beginning of the meeting, but so I'll try not to waste anybody's time. My issue with parking isn't about the number of parking spaces per unit at the development. That's, I mean, whether it's plus or minus one per unit, it's not going to make a big difference. The issue with the parking around the park is my concern. And in the summertime, there are softball games going on, which have on average 30 cars per game, and there's 3 games a night plus a soccer field. You're talking hundreds of cars that come to that park every day. In the summer, use the park, splash pad, volleyball nets, all that, dog park, everything. So we're talking a lot of parking, and I realize that these people who don't live in the community don't understand what we're talking about. It would be a major concern not to have. Right now, there's signs along Kennedy Lane, which is the other opposite side of the park. That the signs along along Tompkins, tell you when you run out of parking along Tompkins, go park on Kennedy Lane. On Kennedy Lane, there's 20 spots that are municipal, and then there's another about 65 spots that belong to church. That's where the majority of people park right now. I realize that's not a perfect solution either, but that taking away that parking lot alone is going to add a ton of pressure onto the street parking. And then on top of that, yes, you're going to have extra cars that obviously aren't going to have parking at Kennedy. There's already lots of those people that live on Monaco right across the street. There's already cars that are parked overnight every night along Kennedy Lane. It's only going to get worse, and it's got to get solved. I really urge the committee to do a traffic study, parking assessment, whatever you got to do. I'm not the authority here, but I think it's a big concern. I just want you guys to know about it.
Josh, thank you very much. Appreciate the delegation. I'm looking to see if there are any questions from members, and I don't see any. So thank you very much for being here this morning. And that does, colleagues, bring us to the end of the speakers list. Before I move on to questions of staff, I'm going to ask Councillor Luloff or Councillor Dudas, who have a presentation to move. Or sorry, a motion. You, says Riley.
Mr. Chair, seeing as I can't move a motion, I'll cede the floor to my colleague, and I can provide comments afterwards.
Certainly, and I'm happy to do this on behalf of Councillor Luloff. Whereas Kennedy Lane East does not have sufficient space to accommodate the current on-street parking demands of the community, whereas nearby residents, park users, and the visitors of the Queenswood Villa retirement home inundate Kennedy Lane East with on-street parking, which narrows the road and makes it extremely difficult for motorists, school buses, pedestrians, and all road users to navigate. Whereas a petition with more than 800 signatures has been submitted to outline the concerns of community members with respect to traffic and parking. Whereas both the increased traffic and parking pressures that will result from this proposal will have undue adverse impacts. Whereas the applicants have not provided sufficient evidence that their development will not further aggravate an already tenuous parking situation. Therefore, be resolved that the zoning bylaw amendment 360 Kennedy Lane East report be referred back to planning staff to work through the outstanding traffic and parking concerns. And be it further resolved, the planning staff work with the applicants to develop a plan to manage construction parking during the build through the site plan approval process. And be it further resolved that planning staff require the owners to issue warning clauses so that potential renters are aware of the limited parking available.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. So with the referral motion on the table back to staff, that is the motion that we will be debating until we vote on that. So on referral, Councillor Lulaf would like to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Listen, I've shared my thoughts about this proposal regularly throughout the development process with the applicants and planning staff. And most recently, I outlined our outstanding concerns in the councillor comment section of the report that is before us today, and really appreciate everybody that took the time to read them. I've had a lot of comments from my colleagues that shows that you really care about these files, and I do too. So thank you very much. I feel that it's important for me to speak today directly to committee members to represent the concerns of my community. Let's start off by saying that it's been a real pleasure to work with Kindred Works and their team on this proposal. Absolutely. They brought forward thoughtful development proposal that seeks to add affordable and accessible rental units to the Orleans market and fill the mission of the United Church to build diverse, affordable, and sustainable communities. I think that this type of development, this is the type of development that we should focus our efforts on while we navigate the current housing crisis. And I'm pleased that the applicants have engaged with community over the last several months in various forms to address many of the concerns that were initially raised. And I want to recognize this excellent work and thank them for it. Difficult issues like massing and drainage were taken very seriously and addressed adequately. So again, thank you. The United Church has been a good neighbor in our community for decades.
Councillor Luff on referral.
On referral. Yeah, on referral. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a way for this development to move forward respectfully and with the support of the community, but we're not there yet. You can see where I'm going. There remains serious outstanding concerns about traffic and parking that have not been addressed by the applicants or city staff. These concerns require serious attention and resolution before this project can proceed in order to secure the buy-in of the community. There's a pre-existing problem with on-street parking on Kennedy Lane. We've heard that quite a bit today. That creates a chaotic and unsafe situation at the best of times. Nearby residents, park users, and visitors to Queenswood Villa retirement home are overflowing Kennedy Lane with on-street parking, thus narrowing the road and making it extremely difficult for motorists, school buses, pedestrians, cyclists, and all road users to navigate, especially in the winter. This application proposes 81 new units, but only 61 parking spaces for residents. And as we've heard today, Orleans is still very much a car-centric community, unfortunately, where most households have to rely on more than one vehicle, and many do not have no vehicles. Whether or not staff agree that this problem exists, there's a widespread community concern that the addition of 81 units on the site will aggravate the pre-existing parking conditions and create an unsafe situation for nearby residents and road users. So let me be clear, there's no room for 20 additional vehicles on Kennedy Lane, much less room for the existing demand for parking in the area as conditions currently exist. 20 represents the number of vehicles that would be unaccounted for, given the assumption that each unit is using one vehicle, the low end of what the pressure may be placed on the street. The widespread concern is demonstrated through the petition submitted by nearby residents with more than 845 signatures. So at this juncture, the applicants have not demonstrated that the addition of 81 units and only 61 parking spaces would not further aggravate the already tenuous parking and traffic situation. It's unreasonable to think that families occupying that one of these units in the heart of Queenswood Heights would be willing to live there without a vehicle, when transit is generally considered to be unreliable and where local amenities are close to 2 kilometers away down a steep hill. I believe that the rationale for 15-minute communities that the applicants have used to justify their parking rate is not practical in this case. For example, it would take about 25 minutes each way for a resident to walk to the closest affordable grocery store. This is not taking into account the steep and often slippery hill that they would be required to climb. Alternatively, residents could use a narrow dirt pathway on the same steep hill. I don't believe that these issues are insurmountable at all. And I don't believe they would take a very long time to sort out, but they will require work on both sides to come up with a meaningful solution. In my report comments, I provided several suggestions and measures that the applicants and city could explore to relieve this pressure on the community, including enhancing the parking near Queenswood Ridge, perhaps by creating a raised street parking area off the roadway, entering into an agreement with OC Transpo to provide passes an option for residents without the need for a parking space, working out a deal with St. Helens Anglican Church to use their lot for overflow parking, or entering into an agreement with car sharing contracts. At this time, I don't believe that any of these measures have been meaningfully explored or exhausted. And for this reason, I'm asking the committee to refer this report back to staff for further work so that the outstanding parking concerns can be addressed meaningfully. And I don't think that it will take a long time. Now, finally, I want to thank everyone who came out to speak today. I feel that this was a respectful conversation. While we may not always agree on the issues, we can certainly still get along without making our arguments personal. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lulaf. On referral, Councillor Troster.
Hi, and thanks so much, Councillor Lulaf, for, I really understand that what you're trying to do is make this project work for your community, but the demand from our community is for city councils around the country to be more brave when it comes to promoting and building affordable housing and missing middle housing. We have a housing crisis. 12,000 people are on the wait list for affordable housing. And increasingly people are wanting to age in place or to be able to find affordable homes in their own community instead of always having to come to the downtown core to find that kind of housing. So I don't think we should delay this application anymore. Again, given that 30 of these homes are designed to be low income homes, it's hard enough to pay rent. I can't imagine also owning a private vehicle on top of it. I don't think anything's going to change unless we take some bold steps. I think to kind of have this foregone conclusion that, well, everybody in the neighborhood has 1 or 2 cars, so therefore it's not possible to not have one. But I do agree with the fact, with the suggestion, Councillor Lulaf, that the applicant work with car sharing and with OC Transpo. I think those things can happen concurrently after this application is approved. It's going to take years to build this development. I think there's time to continue to deepen those relationships. I just think it's a missed opportunity, and I think it's a real strike against this committee if we delay a quality project of this nature any further. Thank you.
Thank you for your brevity. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly understand and appreciate the intent of the deferral. I would likely ask a similar motion if I was in Councillor Lulaf's shoes. My question to staff, though, is did we not see this train wreck coming? Like, why are we having this discussion at committee table today when we know the community's concern about traffic has been there for some time? The ward councillor has raised this for some time. Why was there not more proactive work done with the applicant on this matter? So I'd like to have that understanding, please.
Chair, through you, thank you. We feel that we've done our due diligence on this file in the sense that we have talked to our traffic assessment team. We have evaluated the councillor can concur that we have been going out to the site now for the better part of a year. We have had our transportation project manager involved, as mentioned, our traffic assessment group, who understands that there is a demand for street parking here, but does not see a problem per se. So, we've not had safety concerns raised through 311 prior to this project. We have not, there is a curvature here on the street, which we understand can impact sight lines. That is why on-street parking has been designed on one side of the street. There are current restrictions in place for parking that we understand are working well. The tone, I guess, or the message has been, we recognize the concern, but we don't feel that it warrants a change in the design. What we would prefer to do is to monitor after the fact to see if those concerns actually are validated. It will be very useful tools for us as planners. We're going to be faced with this issue as we proceed in development in this city. Our traffic assessment team does not have, there are benefits to on-street parking. I think you've heard some of them be mentioned here today with respect to developments being able to be more dense, to be better designed. That on-street parking can actually help with traffic calming. So we did look at a number of these things holistically, and we looked at where this site was. We also looked at the fact that there aren't many sites like this in the community. So it's not going to happen over and over and over again. This is a very mature, established neighborhood. Thank you.
Chair, can I just be reminded the first part of this motion is exact wording what requested? Okay. So I just want to make sure we have a clear understanding of what the expectations are. So refer back to planning staff to work through the outstanding traffic and parking concerns. I'm wondering if I could ask the mover if he could just elaborate on what that means exactly.
Please.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, I tried to go through that in my comments a little bit on it. Essentially, what I'd like to see is that, I'm certainly not the final arbiter on all of the options that are available here. But I think that we've identified some that, even some other committee members have expressed, some support for. I'm certainly not asking for people to move mountains here. What I'm asking is that there's a meaningful conversation that can happen between, the community, the developer and staff, to at least look at some of the suggestions that I've made here and just get something in place and bring it back. This doesn't have to take, a year. It doesn't have to take 6 months. It doesn't have to, I don't even believe it really even has to take a month. As long as, they come back and say, like, look, we've engaged with Communauto, two of the visitors parking or 2 of the other 9 parking spaces are going to have, dedicated rideshare program there. And we've got an agreement in place, or at least in principle, with OC Transpo to be providing perhaps an Equipass to the people in the affordable units. Just those sorts of conversations need to happen, just to ensure that we're not exacerbating a problem that, while staff disagrees that it exists, I mean, frankly, I respect our staff. They don't live in this neighborhood. We've heard from Josh and from others that this is a real issue. So all I'm asking for is some conversations. There's no reason why this can't come back after having those conversations, perhaps even at the next planning committee or the one after that. I just want to make sure that, we have something in place that will mitigate this already, pervasive issue on this street. And I really appreciate your question. Thank you. This doesn't have to take forever. It doesn't.
Okay, I appreciate that elaboration. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Gower on referral. Yeah, I'm not going to support referral. I do think it's worth encouraging the applicant to pursue some of the mitigation options they've identified. I would caution people on the OC Transpo one. This comes up a lot. Providing OC Transpo passes is really expensive for an applicant and probably not a reasonable expectation. I will say I did that in my ward last time, but I probably would not recommend that again if we're talking about affordability issues. In terms of evidence, I was on DevApps during the conversation. There's a document from a transportation engineer, perhaps the same one who spoke today, with extensive background about how they've arrived at their justification through modal share numbers and otherwise. I was not convinced coming into this meeting that the reduction in parking was a good idea. I'm more confident with that now. I think the applicant has a very clear understanding of what the transportation needs are of their clients. And I think referring back to staff would be unnecessary use of resources on our staff and an unnecessary delay for the applicant. Also recognizing that reduction in parking has a positive impact on affordability and will reduce traffic as well. I'd be worried that if all of a sudden we're adding more parking spaces, we'd then be allowing or encouraging the owners or the renters of this unit to bring more vehicles into the neighborhood, which is exasperate the traffic issue that we've heard about. So yeah, I will not support the referral. The other 2 clauses in the motion are okay, but not the referral to staff. Thanks, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Gower. Councillor Dudas.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting the referral. The way I see it is there's absolutely nothing wrong with giving the parties a little bit more time to address what will be a forever problem. Because once something is built, as we all know, through experiencing this in our own communities, the problem won't go away. So to take a little extra time to work through what is addressed as a concern by not just the community, but all users of that road, I see that as a prudent alternative to rushing headlong into something when we know that there is an identified issue. I'm in this community a lot. I live in the East End. I'm taking this road as a motorist. I'm there because I'm there at Queenswood Ridge Park. We have the church. There's the seniors residence. It's a well-used road and it's busy to begin with. So as I said, on referral, to just take an extra month, not even, to take a little extra time to work through a problem that everybody recognizes is a problem. I don't see any problem with that, because once we give the go-ahead, we know we're going to have this forever issue. So I support this referral. I think this is a phenomenal project. I think it's going to bring immense value to our community in terms of providing different types of affordable housing. I support the project. We just need to give the parking issue a little bit of a second thought on that. So I will be supporting referral.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dudas. Quickly, before I head back to the members list, Mr. Mark, did you have a comment with respect to the second be it further resolved as it relates to developing a plan to manage construction parking?
Mr. Chair, I'd actually have a comment on both the second and the third. As members of the committee who are on the last term of council may recall, there was amendment made to the Planning Act through Bill 109. Which took away the ability of council to have a role with respect to site plan. And as a result, council can no longer direct staff with respect to site plan conditions. And therefore, it'd be my recommendation to committee that the word consider, make its way into both the second and the third recommendations in the motion, that planning staff considered those two matters. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Friendly. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I echo the sentiments that were raised by several of our colleagues that this is an excellent development. But some of these concerns I think should take a little extra time to be looked further into, because I have an area in my ward that is exactly the same. There are rental townhouses, there are rental stacked units right beside a very large park. But mine's also exacerbated by a very large Movati fitness center that's right by there. And despite the fact that the rental development has a 1-to-1 ratio of parking to units, a lot of people choose not to pay for those parking spaces and therefore clog Grow First Drive, which does present a challenge when that park is really well used in the summer. It's a large neighborhood park. My question is actually to the mover, to staff. Do you foresee an amount of time that you might need to accomplish some of the asks of this motion?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We can definitely work on some of the some parts of this motion. I would remind, I guess, the committee that this is also going through site plan control. And so that is another process where we can continue to push for some of these considerations. So there is another process that accompanies the zoning bylaw amendment. Staff's preference is for the zoning bylaw amendment to go through without further delay and to work through some of the remaining issues through site plan control.
Okay, but in terms of the the considerations, I guess what are now the considerations of the second and third operative clauses, like do you foresee amount of time that you need to consider working with the applicants or to consider requiring the owners to issue warning clauses and all that stuff, to include that in the zoning bylaw?
And Chair, just through you quickly as well, if we're not debating the number of parking spaces on the site today, I really am not certain about delaying the zoning either, because that's what's before us. As mentioned, some of the nuances that you're discussing around transportation demand management, those matters can be built into that site planning process. And Lucy would have a better handle on where we're at in that process in terms of being able to conclude that and add those conditions that staff would ordinarily add to add a notice onto title, for example, for that to alert potential renters about the lack of parking here. So again, back to Lucy, but I would imagine we're within months of that.
Okay, would the mover be open to friendly amendment to say add a firm timeline to this motion if it were to go through?
Yeah, certainly. I'd be fine to add a firm timeline to this. You know, I don't want to hold this development, but we also have no mechanism for influence anymore to add conditions at site plan because of Bill 109. So this is an unintended consequence of a provincial act. So I mean, I'm at a loss when, you know, and this is no disrespect whatsoever to staff, but if they don't agree that there's an issue, then they're probably not going to do anything during site plan. So this is just a clear signal that, you know, there is an issue that's been raised by the community that needs to be looked at in a serious manner. It could take 30 days. That's fine with me too. You know, like it could be the next planning committee meeting. I just want this issue looked at, and there's no other mechanism for me to ask staff on behalf of my community that's come out today in large numbers, 850 signatories on a petition, you know, to look at this in a serious manner. All we're looking for is for a couple of conversations to be had and a couple of agreements in principle. That's all.
So if that's, in that case, let's place the onus on us and staff and defer to the next meeting as a timeline.
So at that point, I think we're talking about a deferral motion.
No, this is a referral motion.
Sorry, I
So
said refer, didn't I?
as a referral with a timeline, I think we're talking about a deferral. Staff may have some insight here. Garrett?
Mr. Chair, staff do have concerns with the ability to come back to the next meeting. I apologize for my voice. Based on the first whereas where it speaks to, you know, and the additional information that was provided by the ward councillor around his expectations and working through or starting discussions in depth with Communauto or other ride sharing opportunities to work on what it would look like with OC Transpo. I respectfully don't know that those discussions could bear fruit within the next couple of weeks. I think those conversations can be started, and we're certainly happy to meet if it's the will of council to refer this back to staff. We're happy to you know, start those discussions, but I don't believe we're able to, you know, bring those to a point of bearing fruit on that first preamble or the first you know, subject of the therefore be it resolves by the next planning committee. Ultimately, I feel it's, you know, we can help to facilitate some of those discussions, but the timelines attached to that are really, you know, going to depend on the applicant and those other parties that we are not in control of.
So Councillor Lowe, maybe we just vote on this motion as it is without further amendment. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I get what he means.
Anything further? Nope. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for everyone's comments so far. They've been quite helpful, and so I'm very aware of the idea of delaying projects when we're in a housing crisis is not ideal. It does take longer for people to get into units, and it will increase the cost of the project. But I'd always rather do something right than do it quickly. And I do see some legitimate concerns brought forth by people in the community, which I tend to weigh quite heavily. And I think we've been trying to get there with staff over the last few questions, and I'm getting the sense that we might not get the answer to this question specifically, but I don't know if it's been posed this specifically yet. How long would it take you to come back to committee with answers to these questions or possible new conditions or additional options?
Mr. Chair, ultimately, it will depend on the discussions that take place between the applicant and the other agencies or organizations. We don't have a control over the timeline of those discussions or how fruitful they will be.
Okay. So we're not going to get a timeline there. I understand that there's probably variables that are out of everybody's control and it's difficult to nail down, but it'd be nice to have something to work with. Staff mentioned the idea of letting this development go ahead as is, and then monitoring. So my question there is, what happened? My sense on that is that the options would be very limited if we let it go forward without additional parking spots being provided, and that space gets taken up with, you know, whatever is included in this development. So if the space is already used up and then we monitor and find that there is a problem with traffic caused by a lack of parking, what are our options at that point in terms of making changes that would fix those issues?
Chair, through you. Again, it's due to the confidence, I guess, that the traffic assessment team has with the traffic in place today, that they're willing to, or that they've suggested that a monitoring approach is more appropriate. Some of the things we could look to at that point would be a further reduction in parking. So either reducing that hourly parking or going to a no parking scenario, which would require a petition.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, would it be possible to bring the applicant back to comment on potential timelines around some of these requests?
Your colleagues beat you to the punch, and I've asked the clerk to, or the coordinator, bring the applicants back. So the applicants, just in terms of how to handle this, rather than asking them formally for comment for the time being, I'm going to ask the applicants to come back into the room. And if you do have a question for the applicant, I'll give them the latitude to answer that. Councillor Kelly, did you want to pose a question directly to the applicant?
I mean, I'm sure they've been listening to the conversation. So just wondering how long it would take to come back with, you know, options and ideas to address the concerns around lack of parking and perhaps some provisions for parking, additional parking.
Mr. Hannaford?
Sure. I'm not sure if Carly Forrester could be brought in as well, just representing the owner themselves.
Yeah, Andrew, I got brought in during the middle of that question. But I do think that any discussion on a transportation pass or a car sharing program is something that we intend to do and is something that will happen. I don't think that delaying the zoning bylaw or referring it back to staff has any impact on that. As some of the delegates mentioned, any delay in this will add cost to the construction, which, as we all know, it's difficult to build affordable housing as is. So any further delay will increase the cost of the project. I will say we are committed to building this project. We are committing to doing it as fast as possible. I think we've been trying to work with staff to make that a reality. And should we have to go back, I can't at this exact moment put a timeline on when that would happen, but I'll say that it would happen as quickly as possible, but with the caveat that those conversations are going to happen regardless of if it's referred back to staff or not. And I'm not sure that is something that should be delaying the application.
I would just add to that we are going through the site plan application process with staff right now, and those conversations are ongoing. I do feel it's more appropriate to address those sort of nuanced discussions through site plan with staff and to allow those conversations with community partners to happen. As you can appreciate, it is quite challenging to secure some sort of agreement with, say, a commune auto when you don't have your zoning in place and you don't know the details of that yet. So I would just suggest that it may be more beneficial to deal with that through the site plan process.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kelly?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. If I could ask Carly and Andrew, stay with us in the room, and I'm going to move to Teresa Kavanaugh on referral, please.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. For a referral, I just want to know, this is about referral related to site plan application, but we're dealing with zoning today. Is that not correct?
This is referring the zoning back to staff until such time as they are able to extract some sort of an agreement with respect to parking mitigations when it could come forward for a vote on the rezoning again here at committee.
Okay, thank you. It's disappointing this is coming very late in the game, but my question is it still not possible at site plan meetings, which the applicant will be doing with staff, that these issues can be worked through so that we would not need to be delayed?
I think the councillor's concerned, and I can ask him to address it directly, but we don't have leverage over that site plan process. If we want there to be these parking mitigations at this point, because of the way site plan has been handled by the province, our option as politicians is to send the zoning back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the question, Teresa. I do appreciate it. Because of Bill 109, there is zero influence that the ward council or the community have over the site plan process anymore. This is the only mechanism left to ensure that the 850 residents that signed that petition that identified this issue, this is the last opportunity for them to have a voice and for us to make suggestions and changes. I have zero influence whatsoever over site plan anymore, and neither do any of us. So frankly, this is the only mechanism that we have in order to have this issue addressed. I think that this is a very motivated developer with a great project. Like, I can't say that enough. I think that this is really, really wonderful. But the only way to ensure that we have something solid in place that's going to address the issues that 850 members of my community have brought forward is by referring this back to staff and having this dealt with as soon as possible. I really think that they're motivated, and I think that this is a great project, and I want to see it move forward. But you cannot discount nearly 1,000 people saying that there's a problem here. Now, let's say that this doesn't pass today and it moves on to staff. And yes, I trust the applicants and I like them quite a bit, and they say that they're going to work through this. But there's no way to hold anybody to that anymore because of Bill 109. And staff do not believe that there's an issue here. And that's okay. I mean, that's their opinion, and I'm certainly not going to criticize them for it whatsoever. But 1,000 people nearly in this area disagree. And these are the people that are going to have to deal with it. The staff that work on this don't live in this community. And so that's why I'm asking for support in referral, because I think that this provides additional motivation to an already very motivated developer just to come back with an agreement in principle to sort out this problem so that we don't have to deal with it again and make a problem that already exists worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Kavanagh, anything further?
Well, I'm very supportive of this project. I think it's great, and we want to see so many more of these. And my concern is that the majority of these people who signed the petition are worried about parking. And the question is parking a problem? And that seems to be the motivation for this deferral. And my concern is that the deferral will mean that they're looking to put more parking in the site, which of course could cause more traffic, ironically. I agree very much with Councillor Gower, who's made the same comment, and therefore I will not be supporting this referral. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Curry on referral.
Thanks. I will be supporting this. And I guess I would ask councillors to consider 850 residents in your area that wrote in and or signed something indicating, not just a few, 850. That's a lot of people saying that there is a problem here. And I can appreciate that staff say there isn't a problem because of the way they've calculated their numbers, because they're calculating them in a completely different way that would indicate there isn't a lot of traffic. Well, but there's still a lot of parking. So they're two different things. And I think that needs to be considered. I don't know. Never have I seen in Canada where there's been 850 people come out and say something and planning staff didn't say there wasn't a problem, but if you just do the math that way, then I guess you can conclude that. But I think we as a committee have to conclude that there is a problem, and that if there is a way to figure it out in the next couple of months, we don't have site plan powers. We have only this power right now. And I hear, well, we'll be having conversations. I think there's already been a lot of conversations. Conversations are not commitments, not a guarantee. Just conversations. I think if we didn't allow zoning now, maybe there would be more than conversations and more of a commitment. And if I were the councillor for the area, I would be wanting a commitment on this. So I will be supporting referral.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Troster.
Look, I feel like, do I need to unfurl a banner that says we're in the middle of a housing emergency? It's just so frustrating to me. I understand that there's community concerns. I looked at the substance of this petition that residents signed, and the majority of the issues that are brought up have nothing to do with parking. There's concerns about negative effect on property values. Frankly, as a committee, we need to ask ourselves, if there was no change to this application, would we still deny it? I certainly wouldn't. It's an extremely valuable application. And so what difference does it make other than delaying important missing middle infill housing
staff has already given us our analysis of the traffic impacts. I think at some degree we have to have some trust there, and we also have some vision, which is we're not going to have less car-oriented neighborhoods unless we try something different. And also, as I've said, I can't imagine affording the cost of a private vehicle if you also qualify for a low-income apartment. The majority of people who live in low-income housing do not own private vehicles. So, you know, I just think this is rather moot. I think it's really problematic. You know, whether it's this application, it's not just this application, it's this one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And it leads to an unconscionable delay in building much needed affordable housing. You know, this week I had an individual in my ward who was evicted from a rooming house. I have nowhere to send him. I have to tell him that there are 12,000 names on the affordable housing wait list. And so in situations like this, where the committee is clearly in support of the project, I don't think delaying it is doing anything other than lip service, because the reality is, even if it came back unchanged, I would find it really hard to believe that we would vote it down based on the lack of 10 parking spaces. So anyway, I know we want to make everyone happy, but I think we also have to make some strategic choices. And those strategic choices are about making sure that people in our community have a place to live. Homes are more important than car storage at the end of the day. And if we just keep going with the same line of thought that you need a car in this community, therefore you can't imagine not having one, it's frustrating to me as someone who lives in a ward that is accepting many residential towers and many developments that absolutely do not have one parking spot per home. I think we need to think bigger, and I think our responsibility is to provide housing to our whole community, and we need to start with this project and just keep going until we knock off that affordable housing wait list. I think anything else is unconscionable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor Johnson on referral.
Wow. I don't have the same level of impassioned passion that Councillor Troster had, but I just wanted to draw some I've been listening very closely because with Councillor Curry suggesting that we think about our community, I'm thinking about the Pinecrest Recreational Complex, which is right in the middle of a very similar situation. It's the only ball diamond, or the only recreational facility in Ottawa that has 6 ball diamonds. So when all those ball diamonds are full, we do have an incredible amount of parking problems in College Ward, and it is extremely frustrating for those residents. But I think, when looking at a zoning application, whether or not this site can handle this kind of density, that is the decision before us. And what we've been talking about today, and I can't help but draw parallels to the Navan Road conversation, is that we're trying to help people move around their neighborhoods differently. And we continue to underfund those transportation planning services that help people move around their neighborhoods differently. And so I would appeal to anyone who is interested in the transportation master plan to come in there and help figure this out so that we can help these neighborhoods thrive. I will not be supporting the deferral or referral based on the question before us, whether or not it's appropriate to move forward with the plan that is in place. We in the West End don't have the access that the East End does, and we're going to be welcoming as much density as we can to try and get some return on development to fund some of our infrastructure. So it's a situation that I empathize with, but I think I will be not supporting the referral. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. If I may offer, I won't be supporting the referral either. The kinds of measures that Councillor Luloff is talking about, car sharing, parking sharing, the provision of bus passes to folks, these are so far out of site plan considerations. These are not things that we can impose without an applicant's agreement. And the question that I have is, what if the applicant doesn't agree to them? Staff have already said they don't agree that the applicant should have to agree to them. What if they don't? And I think Councillor Troster put it best when she said, we're not going to turn down this rezoning. because the bus passes aren't being provided, because they haven't found a way to share the parking with another property. It is this kind of trying to leverage zoning in order to achieve some really small things that are outside of really the main zoning discussion that have led to Bill 109, that led to Bill C-63, where the province is trying to ensure that housing can get built without this kind of hyper-parochial interference by city councils. This applicant has a right to have their application considered within statutory deadlines. I don't know where we are on those statutory deadlines. We haven't made them. So this applicant has a right to take this right to the OLT in order to seek a decision. And the OLT is not going to consider whether or not the provision of 20 of these units is without parking. The OLT will be taking a look at all the language in our official plan, and it will probably say, this is exactly the kind of development, the gentle intensification, the gentle shift away from car-centric planning that Ottawa's official plan speaks to. And I don't think it will be a very long hearing at all. And in the meantime, you know, if it did go to hearing, we would have wasted a great project's time and resources. Colleagues, I would encourage folks to vote against referral, vote for the zoning that I think everyone around this table knows is appropriate, and get on with the business of building some much needed housing. Councillor Luloff, if you'd like to wrap up.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate those comments, and yes, you know, I agree that, you know, this may not be the proper mechanism, but it is the only mechanism that is left. So it's almost like a chicken and the egg argument between the chair and I, where it's like, I would have been able to work through these issues through site plan if I was allowed to work through these issues at site plan. But because of Bill 109, that doesn't exist anymore. Consider the trust that the people that voted for you place in you. Consider that for a moment, and consider if 850 of them didn't vote for you. Some of you wouldn't be around this table right now. It is so important that we listen to our community when you have nearly 1,000 people come and tell you that there's a problem. Whether or not staff agree, these are the people that live in this neighborhood. And I'm here not as a member of this committee. I'm sure there's quite a few other things that I could have done this morning, but not as a member of this committee, but as a member of my community. And here to represent the 850 people that disagree with staff that this is a major issue. This is the only mechanism that I have left because of Bill 109 to be able to bring this matter to a close, to be able to work on something that nearly 1,000 people believe is a problem. And it's one that I've witnessed myself. I can tell you this is a problem. And today, if we don't refer this back to a very motivated developer, this problem will not get fixed. I promise you that. It won't. It's not, they don't have to, because staff don't believe that it's a problem. And if staff are telling them they're not a problem, why would they spend even a moment trying to fix this problem? And that's not to say that I don't have a great deal of respect for these developers. I do believe that they are operating in good faith. But I think that they would probably rather spend their time moving forward on something that we approve today than dealing with these kind of little issues, as some have called it. This is not a little issue. This is an issue that 850 people believe is a problem, and it needs to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Luloff. Seeing no further points on referral, I'll ask for a yeas and nays on referral, please.
Councillor Brockington?
Referral first, yes.
It's on referral, yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Curry?
Yes.
Councillor Dudas?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
No.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
No.
Councillor Kelly?
Yes.
Councillor Kitts?
Yes.
Councillor Lowe?
Yes.
Councillor Tierney?
You indicated you may have to step away from an appointment. Okay.
Councillor Troster?
No.
Councillor DeRuse?
Yes.
Vice Chair Gower,
Nope.
and Chair Leeper.
No.
7 yeas, 5 nays.
Okay, so that carries with the referral back to staff. So we don't need to deal with the main motion today, which I believe brings us to the end of our substantive agenda. I'll try to find the helpful coordinator's notes here. So there are no in-camera items. There was an information previously distributed on cash in of parkland.
Yeah.
Was there 4.9?
Is that a hot mic? Shoot, I'm sorry. We also held the official plan implementation. There we go. So there's no presentation, no delegations, and no correspondence on this. Councillor Brockington had asked that we hold 4.9 on the official plan 2023 implementation. And Councillor Brockington, Robin Vanderland is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff and colleagues. I will be brief, I promise. Read the staff report, appreciate the update, and had a chance in the surgery a few hours ago to talk to staff a little bit on this matter, but just want to go on the record. Staff in their report have talked about preparing and revising secondary plans. Their intended work plan for 2023 includes Lincoln Fields, Pinecrest, Queensview, Riverside South, and the Confederation Heights matter. The latter being in my ward, massive new development over the next 25 years. We might even get a library. Hopefully we'll see what that happens there. Chair, I worked with my community along the baseline corridor during the OP debates and discussions in the community because we envision significant development along the baseline corridor over the next couple decades. And without secondary plan in place, there's some concern about sort of the wild west of development. The past or the former general manager of planning, Mr. Willis, was very supportive of the development of a baseline corridor secondary plan and was clear that this would be a priority for the department during the new term of council. So my question to staff is, knowing that the work plan will be coming later this calendar year, and that was confirmed at our last planning and housing meeting by a question from myself, is the baseline corridor secondary plan still a priority, a top priority for the planning department? Does the department recognize the concerns that have been expressed by basically 4 main wards along the corridor? And can you give any sense of when we'll be tackling or starting the baseline corridor secondary plan? Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, in terms of the priorities for the secondary plans that will be identified in that spring report, I think it's premature to make any commitments on which plans will have a priority and certain timelines. So that will come forward in that report. I can offer, though, that in terms of secondary plans, the intent is to guide development where we would see local major physical change occurring. So if that is a conditional on baseline, that would certainly be in consideration for a priority.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you for that. When will the secondary plan review timelines be articulated in the work plan that we'll be seeing later this year? Is that when we'll have greater clarity on the timelines for these plans?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have a very involved and engaged association along the corridor who, after reading this report, thought that a significant investment of their time was going out the window, tried to assure them that that's not the case, but needed to get it on the record today that this plan baseline corridor as well as the others that are listed are priorities, and we'll have greater clarity when the work plan comes out this year. But again, just wanted to repeat that Mr. Willis was very, very supportive and in agreement that baseline corridor needed to be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockton. Councillor Johnson has some questions.
Well, similar to Councillor Brockington, I was wondering to what extent and I'm sure you are, but to what extent you are basing those priorities in the work plan with other departments. With respect to the baseline rapid transit corridor, the first phase is actually only $22 million. And it's considered affordable, and we're going to start installing some of those transit priority measures at the most western end of baseline in 2023. $4 million authority has been assigned to that. So as you see, what I'm trying to get at is that we are starting to make investments in baseline transformation in other departments. So I wonder, when you gauge out those priorities in your work plan, does that coordinate nicely?
So, Mr. Chair, we will be looking at coordinating with major changes in infrastructure and plan infrastructure as part of the priority setting. But of course, everything will be relative throughout the city and the urban area.
Yeah, similar question, with the Algonquin LRT station coming online, that's also along the baseline transit corridor. And I know that the Algonquin College is putting together their asset plan. So they're doing a similar exercise within the college. Do you work with the college when it comes to those sort of larger planning processes, imagining the area, or is that something I could help to coordinate for that?
So, Mr. Chair, if we were to conduct a secondary plan in along the baseline area or Algonquin hub with the college, they would be part of it. They would be a stakeholder through that secondary plan exercise.
Okay, great. It sounds to me like there's some really excellent momentum for the baseline corridor. So I'm looking forward to hearing how those coordinations come online. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. I don't see any other questions for staff on this item. So is it carried? Is the report received? Thank you very much. So there are no in-camera items. There was an information previously distributed on cash into parkland. I think those are our balances. Always good reading. Are there any notices of motion for consideration in the subsequent meeting? None. Inquiries? None. Other business? We do not have any. Adjournment. Our next meeting will be Monday, March 20th, 2023. Thank you very much, colleagues.